Hey guys, it's the hardcore legend Mick Foley here, and I need to call a quick timeout, a brief timeout, because I wanted to tell your listeners what I have been telling Foley is Pod listeners for a while now about all the cool things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
An all-new edition of The Insiders is here. Conrad sits down with author and historian Keith Elliott Greenberg to look back on his time with the WWF during the golden era of wrestling.
You know, I wasn't working for, the JCP magazine, or I wasn't working for Vern Gagne's magazine as, everything was imploding. I was working for Vincent Kennedy McMahon, and I was watching the company expand, and I was watching talent I've been reading about in the other wrestling magazines arrive on the scene.
Ad-Free Shows members recently chatted one-on-one with the hardcore legend himself, Mick Foley, for the first edition of Ask Mick Live.
Is there a particular place that you get the Foley flannel?
Yeah, I do. I go on Amazon and I type in Buffalo Plaid. Buffalo Plaid is the one that has the even square checks, and I order them. They run small, so I order the 5X. And I've got. If anyone's been watching Most Wanted Treasures, you'll see that I'm literally getting by an entire season with 3 long sleeve flannel shirts, a cutoff flannel shirt, and about 5 different T-shirts, and that's pretty much it, brother.
That's just a small taste, a sampling, if you will, of what we have waiting for you, with 4 levels to choose from. 4. See for yourself why Ad-Free Shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now, right now, at adfreeshows.com. Yeah.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle with. Bruce Prichard.
Well, that's not a rib. She pooted. Is that a rib? No, there's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared of shit.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
You, Bruce.
I love you. Double cheeseburger. Double cheese. Double mayo. Double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hi, well, Jibble Hunter, what do you say? I got a brand new record. I gotta play. She said, not now, boy, but I did anyway, because I'm ready. Yeah, I'm ready. Go, 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 go. Biatches. Wow. You know, I want to start off, man, because somebody sent me a deal and said, hey, were you a Doors fan? Did you listen to a lot of the Doors when you were growing up? And the answer is yes, because you got to break on through to the other side in life. And I misspoke, and I misspeak this all the time when I was talking about Pam Anderson and Jenny McCarthy being managed by Ray Manzarek. It was actually Ray Manzella. And I used to call him Ray Manzarek all the time because I would just tungle slipple, fuckle-upple. And, but because I am a big fan of the Doors. I enjoy the Doors, Jim Morrison's music. And sometimes you just got to bring on through to the other side. Bring on through to the other side. Bring on through. Bring on through. Break on through.
Did you just say tungle slipple? Is that something that Mr. Fernum used to do? I don't know that I've.
Did he what?
Did Fernum Schnavitz ever do the tungle slipple? Because I've never
had an old tungle slipple.
I may have had one. I just didn't know that's what it was called. I'm trying to learn.
You know, that's what we're here to do. We're here to educate, Conrad. We are here to educate.
Okay. Well, I'm for it. I'm ready to.
I had great fan interactions this week. It's really crazy, man.
Wait.
Yo, what?
You had a great fan interaction?
Actually, most of my fan interactions are tremendous. I love our.
No. The typical Bruce Prichard fan interaction is, oh, hi, Mr. Prichard, I'm a big fan. And then you say, oh, okay, thanks, man. And then power walk away as fast as you can.
That's not exactly true. And when you're 30,000 feet in the air, it's pretty difficult to do, man. But, this week, since we don't talk about current stuff, but I'll talk about a current trip, where the old ATC, they were all talking about us all the way home at night and everything and asking, hey, you got Bruce Prichard on that flight? Love something to wrestle with Bruce Prichard, by God. And so you guys, man, and the air traffic control between wherever the hell we were, Columbia and White Plains, man, hats off to you. Thank you for listening, because it's guys like you that just keep us doing what we do and keep us safe in the air. And I greatly appreciate that as well.
Did you just give a shout out to private aviation people?
Yes.
Okay.
Old ATC, air traffic controllers, them people keep us safe in the sky.
No, I'm with you. I just think it's
when you're way up here high and you're flying,
Yeah. Hashtag humble brag. I'm with you.
I'm sorry, you deal with ATC when you're on planes too, man. They're the guys that do the air.
I'm not arguing that, but
you're like the police of the sky.
I've never been on, Delta flight 297 and they come over to 1A and say, Mr. Thompson, like that's never happened. So
it could.
Hey, listen, we had a fun time, a couple of weeks back. We got to launch 2 episodes in the same week. And of course, we're a little behind again. Things are pretty busy in Bruce's schedule. But Bruce, we have a pretty ambitious recording schedule next week. Do we know it?
We do a little bit, man. But see, here's the thing: we're not going to tell anybody what it is.
No. I'm
do it because if I try to schedule it and try to do it that way, what happens then?
Yeah,
for sure. I that would be a bad thing.
Well, we're endeavoring to have this be one of the best summers in something to wrestle history. Last week, though, we got to talk about Revenge of Taker 97. We got to do Ask Bruce questions and shit. I saw really, really great feedback. And then, man, we got some bad news. Old-time WWF fans did. Superstar Billy Graham has sadly passed away. And people have been trying to give him his flowers this week a little bit. Eldridge Wayne Coleman held the world title for a whole year, winning it from Bruno Sammartino before dropping it to Bob Backlund. And people are really now, in hindsight, really appreciating how ahead of his time he was. Our old pal Dave Meltzer wrote, with no superstar Billy Graham, there is no Hulk Hogan. And Hogan may be the most important character of this generation. There may have been a Ric Flair, but it would have been different outside the ring than this Ric Flair. And there definitely would have been a Dusty Rhodes, but not what Dusty Rhodes ended up being. Vince McMahon probably would have been the owner of the WWF, but without the prototype of what a sports entertainer should be created by Graham that became his vision would have been very different. Plus, there would be no Hulk Hogan to execute it. Man, high praise there. And as you're watching along on YouTube, you see that dude, and he had a look like no other. Tell us about Superstar.
Superstar Billy Graham was the first of his kind, and there had been other bodybuilding types, but none with the charisma, none with the personality of Superstar Billy Graham. And Superstar, was the kind of, he did the Muhammad Ali rhymes. He did the raps, man. 265 pounds of sex appeal on the women's pet and the men's regret. The superstar. They're gonna put rope rings around the Eiffel Tower for the superstar Billy Graham because he's so incredible and so sensational all the time. Superstar man was the superstar. Superstar is what you call an attraction. Okay, Superstar couldn't come in and really stay in any territory too long. I think that he would get kind of long in the tooth if he did, because he was so special. And Superstar was smart enough to go and know when to move on. So when the Superstar went to New York and became the WWF champion, that was like, wow. I think that was the longest he ever stayed at one time. For a long stretch was during that time as champion. And he was, the first heel to hold it for any length of time beyond the transitional champion, just a couple of weeks. But Superstar traveled the world, headlining wherever the hell he went, and had the gift of gab and had the gift of being able to talk an audience into the arena. And that is a gift. And that is something that is a lost art through the years where people have just not been able to do that. And Superstar Billy Graham did it with ease and did it unlike anybody else. I think that when you ask guys like Hulk Hogan, guys like Jesse the Body Ventura, Dusty Flair, Superstar embodied everything that they wanted to be, all wrapped up into one. And Superstar was the guy that was out in California, training with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he was in the front row of George Foreman prize fight. He was everywhere, man. They flocked to see him because Superstar Billy Graham was probably one of the first larger than life characters that this business had. And, you can, the other part of it is, Superstar was the first guy really to introduce steroids into this business and to not only just say, when you say, oh, well, you introduced steroids. I think Superstar introduced how to train too. Superstar would tell guys, man, he goes, you're big and strong, and that's great, but you don't look big and strong. You hold a picture of Paul Anderson, who was the world's strongest man, and a picture of Superstar Billy Graham side by side, and you say to the common person, who's stronger? 9 out of 10 are going to pick Superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah.
And that was his shtick. And that, it was like, he goes, I look strong. He goes, I look strong because he worked so hard on the presentation of what the superstar was going to look like and how he was going to be. And, always colorful, always flamboyant. I remember one time in Houston, he came and he wasn't wearing his traditional long trunks that he wore. He wore a lot of tie-dye, but he just wore colorful stuff. And this one night, Superstar was wearing a Tarzan top. It's just like one strap that goes across his chest and trunks. And they were 5-0 was the name of the swatch from K&H Wrestling Wear. So it was this bizarre fabric that had just weird. And he's wearing that, and it was a Tarzan stripe and no long trunks. And he gets on the microphone and goes, Superstar Billy Graham spent all night shaving my pretty legs for the ladies, shaving my pretty legs so that there would be not one single hair to detract from the immense leg. And look at these legs. And started, doing his leg routine. And it was just simple things. It was the first time I'd ever heard a man talk about spending all night long shaving their legs because his legs are gigantic, and you got to make sure that every single hair is removed from these beautiful, beautiful legs. Graham was incredible, man. He was just so far ahead of his time. So far ahead of his time. 10 years later, and Superstar Billy Graham would have been what everybody was talking about in WWE.
It is amazing. More than a decade, maybe 2 decades ago now at this point, you guys put a documentary out. WWE did 20 years too soon. I think it was the name. And it's just really remarkable to think about how big his influence was. Let's talk about your interaction with him. Yeah. After his WWF title run is over, he spent a lot of time in 1980 with Paul Bosch in Houston Wrestling. You would have been around. What was your first interaction like, as best you recall?
I was. So a few things, man. Superstar was around even long before that, and Superstar would come in as just, one-offs for Houston, because Paul liked him and everything. So going back, Graham had battles with the best of the best. And then there was a period of time where I'm trying to get my timelines right here. There's a period of time that the rumor mill had it that Superstar Billy Graham had died. He had passed. And everybody, was like, God, but I just didn't hear anything about it. And I remember Nick Bockwinkel telling us that, Yes, no, he passed. I went to his funeral. And then one day, get the call at the office on the old 7794 number. That was 659-7794 because 659-7793 is where you got tickets and information each day of the week, Monday through Friday from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. But 994 rang. That was a special hotline. And picked up the phone. Houston Wrestling. This superstar Billy Graham is Paul in. Put him on hold because we'd all heard, man. Superstar was dead. Bockwinkel went to his funeral.
Oh my God.
I said, Paul, there's somebody on the phone that says they're superstar Billy Graham. He says, we'll put him through. Paul took the call, and Superstar was working in the main event the next Friday. And it was superstar Billy Graham. So,
So he created The Undertaker too.
Yeah. I mean, it was just crazy. And Paul wanted to prove to everybody that no, he wanted to be the first. He wanted to be the first to have Superstar back in a ring. And I think Superstar just took some time off to create that buzz to come back from the dead. But the first time that I was ever a ring announcer, 14 years old. And main event that night was Superstar Billy Graham versus Jose Lothario in a 2 out of 3 fall match. I opened up that evening by asking everyone to stand for the playing of our national anthem. From there, I went on to introduce the first person in that match, who happened to be Toru Tanaka. And I said, weighing in at 250 pounds from Yokohama, Japan.
My God.
Toru Tanaka.
Yeah.
Go fast forward to the end of the night. I'm not having a real good night. I was rotten. I was scared to death. Terrible. And the Superstar was disqualified or something, and Jose won the second fall. And I announced the winner of the match the winner of the second fall by disqualification. Super Sock Jose Lothario. And Graham got out, Graham grabbed the microphone. What are you saying? Superstar Billy Graham lost because you're nothing but a punk kid. You're nothing but a punk kid. A punk kid doesn't say we're the Superstar Billy Graham winner. You're a punk kid. You punk kid. Let's call me a punk kid 20 times in a row. And I'm just shrinking in my chair like, oh my God, thinking I'd screwed up. But just, you weren't smartened up back then.
Right.
And it was an interesting night, but then I got to work with Superstar and WWE, and always interesting.
He feuds with Butch Reed and even gets one last Madison Square Garden main event once you're with the company. It's August of 1987, and he would sell it out in his first appearance at MSG in 4 years. I assume you were at that show. You got to see Superstar at the Garden, right?
I did. Sure did. And it was, I know Superstar had some hip issues. He had health issues before he came back to WWE the last time. And it just wasn't, he wasn't what he was.
Right.
Still had big arms, but they weren't the same arms, put it that way. And, Graham just prided himself in his body so much, worked so hard through the years to maintain that physique. And as much as, you could credit Superstar for the steroid thing if you want to. But Superstar also was one of those guys that preached moderation and would say, this is what you do. And when he would see guys going down the dark road, whether it be cocaine or anything, usually because he was around enough in different territories and saw enough that he was usually the first person to be there to say, hey, take it easy, man. Take it easy. This life's too short. Don't be don't be fucking it up with this stuff. And he would call it junk. And it just, he was, look, man, I thought I got along great with Superstar. I've known him since I was a kid, a punk kid at that. And always was really good to me. So, Godspeed, rest in peace, Superstar.
I want to ask a little bit more about Superstar. I don't know that we have really enough to do a full episode, but I've always been curious about, sort of the end of his WWF run, and you're there for that. He's going to be given a shot to do some manager work for Don Morocco, and then even have a little bit of time as a color commentator. Those don't really seem to work out, and then it feels like it's kind of fractured with him and Vince in a very public way for years. Why don't you think it worked out there? And how do you think they got so sideways? I mean, Superstar was described in the WWE documentary as being bitter and angry and things like that. And I'm just curious how it sort of went sideways and then how it got back together. Like, it feels like time heals all wounds. Is that right?
I think so. And when Superstar came back initially in 1987, he gave the impression, you have to understand, man, you didn't have internet. You didn't have what we have today to get an instant, take a picture. Well, then you took a picture. It took 2 weeks to get your pictures back. And Superstar told Vince that he looked exactly the same as when he left. He did. He put on an awful lot of weight. He had 1 or 2 hip replacements by that time. And look, his mobility was shot. He wasn't the same physically, but he was the same when it came to, his promos and his talk. But Superstar had a hard time advancing them into the late 80s, if you will. Things were changing. So having the gift of gab, Superstar went on to manage Morocco. Morocco didn't really need a manager. It was a gift for Superstar. And then we said, well, let's try him out in the play-by-play booth. And that was, I think, a rib on me because he just didn't. Superstar was good talking about Superstar.
Right.
But he wasn't real good talking about other people. So that was a challenge, to say the least. And we had Monsoon work with him. I put him with Rod Trongard for a while, Alfred Hayes. Superstar just had a hard time talking about anybody that wasn't named Billy Graham.
Well, we know eventually his time in the WWE is going to run out. And then it feels like, when Vince has some troubling times with the company, whether it's this scandal or that scandal, certainly the steroid scandal, boy, Billy Graham is in front of every red light you could find, sort of disparaging the company and advocating against Vince. And then years later, he comes back into the fold. And that's the story we would see over and over with Vince McMahon. Did you ever have any communication with Billy when he had maybe a different perspective on the company, or do you remember why or how things got better?
I think that as far as Billy souring, he wasn't there anymore. And sometimes folks can live in houses without mirrors and can't see who might be responsible for some of that. I just think that Billy was bitter and upset by not having a job anymore. So you tend to lash out on the last person that you work for and like to blame them. I think that's all it was. And in time, you realize that, okay, you know what? I might have fed into some of that, and I might be a big reason as to why I'm not there anymore. And you change and you see things through a different set of lenses.
Well, I'm glad that it ended on a good note. Do you remember the last time you saw Superstar?
I don't. It's been many years, and I want to say it was somewhere in Arizona. It was in Phoenix somewhere, but or at some time. I don't really remember, and I want to say I remember seeing Superstar. He did Eddie Guerrero's funeral, but I don't remember where I saw. I did see him after that. I just don't recall when.
When he finally takes his rightful place in the WWE Hall of Fame, I think that was 2004. Were you there when?
Yeah, his speech is still going on. As a matter of fact,
I'm curious about the real life, sort of meet and greet that happened. I'm sure it had to happen between Vince and Superstar after all the bad blood. Are you privy to? Were you there to see it come back together? Because that's got to be a pretty special moment, does it not?
Yeah, it was. It was like two old friends, just
Right.
two long lost friends. They hadn't connected in a long time. Big hugs, and everybody was fine.
We'll put a bow on Superstar for now. Any final words? What can he tell us? What do you think his legacy will be?
Man, Superstar Billy Graham is going to go down as the first and the original. He was the OG, man, and nobody could touch him in his day. He was just so head and shoulders above anything else in the business in that regard, as far as charisma, as far as look and personality. What the hell?
Wow, that's on my side. We're supposed to start recording in 5 minutes.
Oh, I thought you had to take your pills. Take your pills, Conrad.
Yeah, so Bruce is really struggling with the whole Eastern Central thing this morning. And listen, we wanted to do our best to pay tribute and pay homage to the late, great Superstar Billy Graham. But the reason we're here today is Over the Edge 1998. We're going to get back in our Wayback Machine, talk about 25 years ago. And yeah, it was almost a close call this morning because of our time difference. But hey, if you're looking for something else close, how about the closest shave you've ever had from Henson Shaving?
Oh, that's right.
Bruce and I are such big fans of Henson Shaving. We think you will be too. Here's one of the real reasons we're big fans. It's a family aerospace or family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Wait, you just said they were a razor company. Well, they've made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover, and now they're making parts for your face. That's going to give you the best shave you've ever had. Here's what they're doing. They're using their aerospace grade CNC machines to cut metal razors that are just 0.0013 inches. And I know what you're thinking. Well, I don't know what does that mean? Well, it means it's less than the thickness of a human hair. It also means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. And it gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. You see, seriously, my favorite part of this is that not only is it better than what you've been doing, it's cheaper. That's not normally the way it works. You see, normally when something's better, it costs more money. We all understand that. This is one of those rare circumstances where this is the best shave you've ever had. It's better than the razor you've been using, and it's also cheaper. The way Henson has done this is because they wanted to make the best razor, not the best razor business. There's no plastic here. There's no subscription gimmicks. There's no proprietary blades. There's no planned obsolescence. It uses the standard old school dual edge blade like your grandfather and frankly every professional wrestler ever are very familiar with, but with the benefits of new school tech. See, the boys or your grandpa never had a razor that was thinner than a human hair. So not only is it better, it's also cheaper. How much cheaper? Well, once you own a Henson razor, it's only like $3 to $5 to replace the blades. That's not $3 to $5 a week. That's not $3 to $5 a month. That's $3 to $5 a year. Let's say no to subscriptions. Let's say yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/wrestle to pick the razor for you and use the code WRESTLE and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just be sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/wrestle and use the promo code WRESTLE. Dude, this is the best razor I've ever used. What's your experience been like with Henson?
Well, forget about my experience. Could you imagine if Superstar Billy Graham wanted to shave those pretty legs of his if he had a Henson razor? Okay, he would go, anybody, what? Where is it, baby? Where's my Henson razor? Where's Bruce Prichard? your promo code Wrestle and give me a handsome razor so I can shave these pretty legs. I can shave these pretty legs, and I can save all my money from the payoffs I'm going to get because my legs are so pretty. Thank you, Henson Shaving and promo code Wrestle for saving me money and taking care of the superstar milligram. Hang on, let me get this pit over here.
I love it. Check it out, hensonshaving.com/wrestle. Be sure to use that promo code Wrestle. 100 free razors. Just be sure to add them to your cart. So, Bruce, we're talking about Over the Edge 1998. I can't believe this is real, man. This was 25 years ago. We covered Unforgiven 1998, way back in the archives. And we just did a remix of it here on the main feed last month. The gist is we're coming out of Dude Love turning heel and challenging Steve Austin for the WWF title. And, of course, the 83-week streak of the Monday Night Wars, where Nitro was victorious, has ended. So now we're going to talk a little rumor and innuendo, because this is the time period where Ric Flair's in a bit of a Mexican standoff with Eric Bischoff. And at that show in Greensboro, Flair, as the rumor goes, would be circling the building, thinking about making an appearance on the WWF pay-per-view. Now, you might be wondering, how would that happen? He's technically under contract, but he's at odds with Eric. His son, Reed, had just won a wrestling championship on the amateur level. So the idea, as the story goes, was, we'll just show a great wrestling champion in the front row, and it's Reed Flair, but there's Daddy Rick in the background. Clearly, Rick liked the idea of having Bischoff completely out of his life. If you guys would have been able to pull Rick into the fold here in 1998, you think he and Austin could have had a pay-per-view run or something like that?
Anything's possible. You know, it was, I remember it vividly, you know, should we bring him in? Should we not? And with all of the legal ramifications of that, and more than anything, the unknown, you know, hey, if Rick went in and bought a seat, then who's to stop him?
Right.
He happens to sit across from the hard cameras. Who's to stop him? But the perception, you know, and the reality that Rick was telling everybody that's what he was going to do, that doesn't help things, because now you've got Rick talking about, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, calling us. Well, hey, that could be pretty cool. But now you've had the discussion, and there's no denying that, well, you guys did have a discussion, and you kind of lose that one.
Yeah. Well, Eric Bischoff has lost not only the confidence of Ric Flair, but a lot of WCW performers. Guys like Chris Jericho and Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero were visiting ECW shows, hanging out in the locker room and sort of openly chatting with other talent that, hey, I can't wait to get out of here when my WCW contract is up. Were you hearing from other people on the WCW side of things, like, hey man, I want out of here?
There was a lot of that. There was a ton of what people. You look at the good. You look at the good, man. Wow, WCW is doing great right now, and what have you. I think the perception within WCW was a lot of talent were not being utilized to their fullest potential. And they felt that there was a glass ceiling that pretty much Hulk was in charge of, and they were never going to break through. So there was a lot of disgruntled people at WCW at the time, constantly looking to get out. And, you know, they had signed contracts. They had signed long-term contracts for a lot of money. And I think that they looked at it like, okay, I can wait this out and just take the money for my family. But people were not happy. It was not the place to be at the time.
Well, the place you definitely didn't want to be was the USWA. In this era, it comes out there's a bit of a lawsuit, and you're going to be named.
Oh boy!
Apparently,
I get named in all these damn lawsuits.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. They named you, Jim Ross, Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon, Arnold Scollin, Larry Burton, and Jerry Lawler. And as I understand it, the rumor and innuendo is that you guys had a meeting with Mark Selker, telling them that Burton was a respected television producer and well known within the wrestling industry. And Burton tells Selker he was getting a deal buying the company for only $1.1 million, talking about the USWA, because Lawler apparently was unaware of the potential income from television advertising sales that the business could generate. Blah, blah, blah. Listen, we all kind of know the story here, and this is a story that you've sort of maybe described in a different generation where guys would sell their territory and what are we selling? So what do you remember of this USWA lawsuit that names you of all people?
I don't know. I really don't know much, if anything, about the lawsuit itself. It never got past, hey, you're being sued, at least on our end. There was a guy, I couldn't tell you what Mark Selker does or what he did, anything about him. Couldn't pick him out of the lineup. But Larry Burton was a friend of Jerry Lawler's, who had some stroke in Hollywood. I think he was credited on some TV shows and movies and things like that. His best friend was Jeff Conaway. Is that right? From Grease and Taxi. But he was a Hollywood guy.
Right.
He was just like he was a Hollywood mover and shaker type guy. I didn't know Larry very well. But Lawler brought him in and said, hey, he's got a guy who wants to buy the USWA and wanted to buy the library. And that was kind of about it. The deal was that Selker was going to take over the promotion, pay Lawler money to allow him the library and the ability to run Memphis, Tennessee, by God. Again, hey, we're selling air here. This was a little different than selling air because they were also selling the library of the Memphis TV shows. And they had a pretty good library.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember Jerry Lawler saying to me one day, I just always wanted to have $1 million in my bank account. Wanted to be able to look and see that I had $1 million cash in my bank account. Well, he did. He got it. But I don't know. I don't know, what Selker really planned to do. I don't know that Selker knew what to do once he got it.
Right.
Don't know what he expected. I think he expected that it was going to be this juggernaut that made millions upon millions of dollars every week. That just wasn't the case.
And by the way, those businesses are not for sale for $1 million.
Right. Exactly. So, I think Selker got offices in Memphis, nice, in a nice office building, got all these offices, they have all these people work for him. And, Lawler's working out of his car in his house.
Right.
Burton doesn't even have an office. And I think that Larry Burton only got involved in it essentially as like a broker. Yeah, I got somebody that is interested in buying your IP. What do you think? How much do you think I can get for him? Jerry, I don't think knew what he was selling, but Jerry, I know, went in and did buy out Jerry Jarrett at that time, so that Jerry would be the sole owner of everything.
Yeah, that's probably a story for another time. Let's talk about where business is. We've had a lot of fun talking about the phenomenal growth of the Attitude Era, and I really enjoyed 97, but just seeing the 97 to 98 jump is unbelievable.
Scary.
From March of 97 to March of 98, attendance is up 82.5%. 50% of the house shows in March of 98 were sold out completely. Back a year prior in 97, only 7% of those were sold out. Ratings are up 56.3%. And here's a staggering stat. Your pay-per-view income from WrestleMania in 97 is 2.46 million, which doesn't sound bad. But in 1998, it's 10.79 million. Listen, you were there for a lot of the huge boom of 87 forward, the whole golden era, if you will, of Hulkamania. But this, I mean, business has never been hotter. Revenues have never been hotter than 1998. And it's crazy how just in 1 year, it all changes. Momentum's a real thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it was good to see because everything that we were touching during this period was turning to gold. Stone Cold Steve Austin was absolutely on fire. Everything was on fire. So it was a good time, and there was no sign of it tapering off. It felt like we were on the explosion end of things, and man, we still had way out there to go. Didn't know when it would end, and just kept chugging along, and you just get in it. It's funny when people say, well, what do you do? How do you enjoy it? You take time off, you're enjoying all of it. As I say today, well, we still have a TV show live on Monday. It's got to get on the air. Still have a TV show live on Friday that's got to get on the air. Well, we still had 2 TV shows back then. They both had to get on the air every single week. That doesn't change. You have to keep going 52 weeks a year. There is no downtime. There is no, whoo, boy, what a quarter that was. We can now just kind of kick back and relax. No, not the way it works. And when everything's exploding all around you, you can't lose focus of what needs to be done every single week.
Well, what's interesting to me is to see how it becomes more of a pop culture thing again. It felt like the WWF with Hulkamania and WrestleMania and all that created in the mid 80s. It became a part of pop culture and Saturday morning cartoons and lunch boxes and all that. And now it feels like with the success of Steve Austin, that's back. I mean, these Austin shirts and these WWF shirts and the scratch logos, as you're watching on YouTube, you see that iconic Austin 316 shirt. These are popping up. Certainly the DX shirt as well. Not just in the malls across America, but Walmart. I mean, I remember walking into Walmart and it's like, there's a kiosk full of nothing but WWE merch. And it's like, what is going on? Like, your merch people, your licensing people, the people who work on the business, not necessarily on camera, but they're hitting a home run here, dude. And there's a huge appetite, maybe bigger than ever, right?
Yeah, there was a different philosophy in what we were going to do. The philosophy for years before that was, oh man, what are we going to do in venue sales? How are we going to get these t-shirts and all the merchandise to a venue to sell to our audience?
Right.
When finally we were able to figure out the licensing end of things, where you have a licensee that now goes out, gets all of that out mainstream everywhere. And it was great to see, man. It was pretty cool to go pretty much anywhere. Macy's had a WWE section of just, nothing but WWE stuff. Everywhere you went, the going through, God, I forget where we were the first time we saw it. I want to say in Detroit, but going through an airport and having Austin 316 shirts and WWE stuff. That's incredible.
It is incredible. Well, let's talk about what's happening on camera. The Raw after Unforgiven, where we're starting our build to this pay-per-view Over the Edge, is perhaps most well known for the DX invasion. This is a fantastic idea. It's become one of the most celebrated stories in WWE history. You see lots of people say, oh, and then we drove a tank. Well, boys and girls, that's not what a tank looks like. But still, let's not let the truth get in the way of a good story. It was a major moment. It's fantastic. And as I understand it, this is a Vince Russo idea.
Is that what you understand?
Is that not the idea?
I really don't know about the tank. The idea of going to the other show was mine. It came up in a meeting when Vince asked the question, hey, back in the day, when you're in the middle of a war, what would you have done? And I raised my hand. I said, we'd go knock on their door. We would go and show up at their shows. We would make noise at their place and let people know that, hey, there's another brand in town. We're the guys. We're what you need to see. Used to be that you would send your toughest guys and try to get in a fight with anybody that was on the other side. Russo may have had the idea for the Jeep and all that stuff, but I'm the one that went and produced all that stuff. It was my idea to go knock on their door, to go to them. Not fuck it. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go to them. Go steal it. Take it. And that's what we did.
In hindsight, would it have been the best thing ever if they would have opened the doors, or would that have been bad for your show since they would have had it on Nitro?
I don't know. I was hoping that they would. And I say that without knowing
what the
at
outcome
all what would happen.
It just would have been fun. Would have been interesting.
Would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that, everybody talks about, oh, yeah, there would have been this huge fight and Ming and all this other shit. I don't think there would have been that fight.
No, the guys are friends.
Yeah, and I remember saying, hey, if Ming shows up, let me go talk to him. We're friends. But I don't think Ming would look at that and want to fight for promotion.
No, Ming wants a job with Vince McMahon on the other side of this.
He's I think everybody was professional enough, but I don't know. I don't know. I wanted it to stay open just to see what was going to happen.
It could have been fun, man. Can you imagine how much fun Jerry McDevitt would have had with that fallout?
Oh my God.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah, I had the Atlanta attorney's number in my pocket. It's the only thing I had in my pocket. I had my money, I had everything else put away, and I just had the attorney's number written on a piece of paper. That's all I had.
And as I understand it, maybe you were ready to do a little tape switcheroo, or was that a different DX invasion?
No, that's everything.
Oh, I got you. You always just have an extra tape in your pocket.
Yeah, you never know when the popo are going to come and try to shut you down.
Yeah. Look, here it is, officer. You can have it. Blank. So listen, that episode.
I'm sorry.
Is the most watched episode of Raw in history.
You're welcome.
Now, mainly it's because Nitro is on a tape delay because of the NBA playoff, but still, it broke the record by almost a full point. It got a 5.71 rating. That's an 8.20 share. That means you're in 4.188 million homes. Now, to be clear, these days, when we talk about ratings, we talk about number of people. This is number of homes. So that makes this the single most watched wrestling show in history up to that point. And this big show is centered around Dude Love wanting another shot at Steve Austin, even though he's the person who cracked Vince McMahon with a chair the night before. Dude Love is informed he will not be getting a shot, and instead Goldust is going to get that shot. Dude Love not too happy about that. We see Austin and Goldust in the main event. Vince is going to make himself the timekeeper. Briscoe's going to be the special guest referee, and he's going to try to fast count Austin. Finally, Austin hits Goldust with the stunner. Briscoe won't make the final count because, wouldn't you know it, between counts 2 and 3, he got something in his eye.
It happens.
It happens to all of us. And then here comes Mick Foley as Dude Love, and he's going to hit Briscoe with a chair by accident. And that's the end. I guess this is Austin must pose. In real life, Adam Copeland is getting a tryout. He's going to be managed here by the Jackal, who we know as Don Callis. He's going to pick up a win over Draws. So listen, we're trying Don Callis in a few different roles, and we're eventually going to settle on the Edge persona for Adam Copeland. What was your first impression of Adam Copeland?
Sexton Hardcastle.
Yeah.
Was
his gimmick name for the Indies.
Yeah. And great guy, great attitude. And we had nothing but high hopes for him. He came in with Christian, and both of them were absolutely fantastic and just had high hopes for both of them. I think that when you looked at Adam Copeland, you saw a star from day one. And, you know, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you see a star in someone and they never really make it to that superstardom. I think Adam did.
Owen Hart is going to turn heel on Ken Shamrock and join the Nation on Raw. That, to me, at the time, you know, and I understand timing is everything, but if you look back 6 months, it felt like Owen just had to be a babyface on the heels of the screw job and attacking Shawn Michaels, who was a mega heel. It felt like he was going to be poised for a babyface run. It didn't really work. So we're pivoting to a heel. Why didn't Owen as a babyface work? Why didn't we embrace that more?
I think the audience, don't ask me why we didn't. The audience didn't embrace it. I also think that Shawn was so entertaining at the time that Shawn was able to paint Owen in a way. So you have
Nugget didn't help, you're saying?
No, I'm saying it helped him tremendously.
Okay.
Why it helped him? Because Owen embraced it.
Yes, he did.
Owen was like, don't call me Nugget. By God, I'm not a Nugget and all this other shit. Owen embraced it, made it work.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is that with Owen embracing it, it made it work and he became a heel in it. I think Owen is much more comfortable as a heel. And it showed here. So the audience wasn't taking him as a babyface. And I think some talent would have gone, oh my God, the Nugget thing is killing me. Owen said, I love this Nugget thing. Let's make it bigger.
Yeah.
So you always have a choice. You can bitch about it. Oh, God. Well, I say what they saddled me was this horrible thing. Or they gave me this opportunity to make something out of maybe nothing, but let's see what we can make out of it. Take it as a challenge. You always have a choice, and Owen Hart made that choice to make the most that he could out of it.
Talk to me a little bit about Wally Yamaguchi. He's going to debut as Kai and Tai's manager.
Yeah.
And we've touched on him before, but I'm just fascinated how this guy just pops up on the scene and becomes a manager in an era where we're not really rocking a lot of managers. I mean, once upon a time, it felt like every bad guy in the World Wrestling Federation had a manager, whether it was Captain Lou or Slick or Bobby Heenan, or there was always a manager. And it seems like they're phased out. And then here comes Wally seemingly out of nowhere.
Yamaguchi-san.
Right.
Great guy, man. Wally Yamaguchi was a photographer and editor for Gong magazine, very influential in Japan. And all the boys knew him. And I'd known Wally, God, since I was maybe 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
So Wally and I had gone way back. But bringing in Kai and Tai, they didn't speak English very well. And we needed a manager that could help get them where we wanted to get them. And Wally spoke English, but also Wally had a flair for the dramatic. And, you know, Wally always wanted to be a worker. You know, he liked being an executive, but he always wanted to be a worker. So he relished, he jumped at the opportunity to be able to talk and get in and take some bumps and things like that. Great human being.
And maybe had one of the greatest, funniest moments and lines and segments in WWE history, at least for me.
Choppy pee-pee.
Well, if you think it looks like somebody has tried to choppy your pee-pee, you need to try Blue Chew, boys and girls. We are proud to be talking about Blue Chew every single year here on Something to Wrestle because it really works. This episode and our wieners are sponsored by Blue Chew. Remember the days when you were always ready to go? Why not increase your performance? Get that extra confidence in bed. We're talking about BlueChew.com. You see, Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take these dudes anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. And Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. Chew it and do it. We got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is WRESTLE to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. We want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Let's talk about Undertaker.
I love sex. And I love Blue Chew. Just thought I'd say that.
I stepped on your line there. Can you just repeat yourself there?
I love sex. I love Blue Chew. Use our promo code Wrestle.
I'm gonna make my text message ringtone for you. Just you saying I love sex. So anytime you text me, it'll say that.
Okay.
Undertaker is going to destroy Barry Windham on this episode of Monday Night Raw, and even Meltzer would point out that Barry was looking, well, out of shape, and he's not around the company much longer. It feels like we could never really get Barry Windham at his best here in the company. Do you think he was sort of burned out on being a professional wrestler, or what was going on with Barry? Why didn't this fit? I mean, this guy was regarded as one of the best workers in the business, and now it's just not clicking.
I just think that Barry was tired and ready to move on. You know, you look at, we all talk about Barry being one of the greatest workers of all time because he was, and a nicer guy you couldn't find. But Barry walked to the beat of his own drum. Right. And he did things the way he wanted to do them when he wanted to do them. People always say, I should have been NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Maybe. I don't think Barry wanted that.
Right.
I don't think Barry would have wanted that hassle. It's pretty laid back. Just if you were, for those who know Barry, they'll understand what I'm saying when I say this. Barry was just cool. He was, you look up, cool. There's Barry Windham.
I like it. Well, after the match with the Undertaker here, Undertaker's going to call out Kane. And when Kane comes out with Paul announces that Kane is actually his own son. Is that your favorite wrinkle that you put together in this whole Undertaker Kane story? I mean, it's one thing that they're brothers. It's another thing that I banged your mom, Undertaker.
I think the original line was that he diddled.
Yes.
Yeah. It was explain that to Paul, because now Paul had to go and explain that to his wife.
Yes.
Which was funny in and of itself as well. But yeah, man, what if you just diddle Taker's mom? And what if Kane was yours? And it was always a what if. I don't think we ever actually, did the DNA test or anything like that. But
but that would have been fun though, right? Bring Maury Povich,
yeah,
Maury Springer in. That would have been
absolutely, great. Absolutely. But it was better if you just let the theater of the mind take over.
Right.
Let's just go with it, man. Yeah. Taker's mama was, promiscuous.
Oh, well, here's the thing.
With the pallbearer at the funeral parlor.
That's exactly right. And we heard that story. You guys tried something different here. a cameraman puts the camera down on the floor, kinda. It's at an angle, and it looks like it's supposed to be off, and you catch what's supposed to be and meant to be, wink, wink, a private conversation with Jerry Lawler. And just hearing Paul Bearer explain it is hilarious. And yeah, it's one of the better stories in WWE history, and all the twists and turns I'm sure you were having fun with. And these guys were just fantastic in the bit. We should mention Dan Severn in this era. Ken Shamrock is enjoying some success, so hey, why not?
Wait. So that scene,
Yes,
that we did, we did something with Howard. Howard Finkel was working with Harvey Whippleman at this time in Memphis, doing some different things. But we did in the dressing room. We had a hidden microphone, and Brian Christopher getting Howard to talk about what it was like at WWE. And Howard's like, "Oh, well, let me tell you, Brian, you're looking at the brains." And he's like, "What? Yes, I am the one that comes up with everything and does all the work." And Brian's like, what do you mean? What about Vince? Ha ha ha! Vince gets me coffee in the morning, Pally. And, what about this one? Oh, they all work for me. They all bow down. If you want to get ahead in this business, you talk to me. I'll take care of you, Brian. And we're watching. It was so bad. It was fucking great. And that's how we came up with the idea. Let's have the camera eavesdrop on Jerry and old Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer talk about his conquest there. "Oh, yes, I made her scream. Oh, yes." It's good shit.
God.
What?
I love it. It's a great skill.
Wait, I'm not going to go there.
Thank you. Dan Severn is going to answer a Triple H Open challenge, but Cornette is going to stop Severn, and there'll be an arm bar and a choke to split up the whole Severn Cornette pairing. And the Observer would say this: a decision was made to get Dan Severn away from Cornette for whatever reason, and they injured Cornette to explain his absence from TV for a few weeks while he went on vacation. Neither Cornette nor Dan Severn knew of the angle until the night it was done, and the explanation given was that Vince Russo had given McMahon a list of all the faces and heels on the roster. And as you can imagine, the list is heavily weighed on the heel side, and they need to get some heels onto the face side. This, to me, reads like an interesting report that I almost wonder, that doesn't sound right. Why did you guys separate Dan Severn and Jim Cornette?
I just don't think they fit.
Right.
If there were ulterior motives, I don't know about them, but I don't think they fit. Dan was who he was, and you're not really going to change that. Putting Cornette with him takes away from what Dan was. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
So Dan didn't need Cornette. And I don't know that Corny could have helped him anyway.
We've got Cornette not really just going on vacation, but getting married. What do you remember of Cornette getting married here in 98?
Yep.
Is this the garlic story?
No, that was my wedding.
Okay.
That was my wedding. Come in. Smells garlic.
Russo is going to get a tryout doing commentary on Shotgun because Cornette normally does it, but with him away, it gives Russo an opportunity. Russo had been doing the New York version of Shotgun already. How far did Russo as a commentator get, and why did it stop?
Because he was horrible.
Okay, well, there's that.
And the same reason I stopped. I sucked at it.
Right.
You either got it or you don't in that regard. And I couldn't do that job in a million years. And Russo was terrible.
Well, the night after this live Raw, just one night removed from the pay-per-view, of course, we've got to do a taped Raw. So we're doing that, live tape routine here. And it's reported in the dark match here, Edge is going to beat Matt Hardy. That's crazy when you think about it. I mean, think about what those guys are going to do together for the coming years. And here they are. And this is the Raw taping where Vince McMahon would introduce Steve Williams as a heel killer and destroys Too Cold Scorpio in a dark match. But it's in the Observer that he looked bad. So we know that somebody in the office, our pal Jim Ross, had really been pushing for Dr. Death to come in. And then it looks like maybe it's not a good fit almost right away. What do you remember about Dr. Death and his dark match debut?
Not good. Not good at all. Steve, there's no matter where you go and what you do, every audience, new audience, if you will, you need to get over with. If you come in and you work like you're already over, that new audience, they may not know why. They go, fuck this guy. Thinks he's hot shit.
Right.
You got to get over with everybody. You have to treat every night as a brand new night. And you got to work for it. And if you just go out and expect it, you're not going to get it. I think, some of that had been pumped into Steve's head, that he's already over, he's already the man, you're this, you're that. And, to me, Doc, in his career, went out and worked like he was fighting to get over every night. And somewhere along there, I think he got out of that. At least here, that was my opinion.
The Nation of Domination at this point forward is only going to be
hang on that music too. Nation of Domination, Nation of Domination, Nation of Domination.
How do you get wrangled and recruited to do that?
I was in the studio.
Oh, there you go. Hey, we just need a bunch of guys here. Come over here and say this. Yeah, I got you. Well, I didn't know.
What if they recognize my voice, though?
Well, as long as you don't break out "I love you" in the middle, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Owen Hart is going to cut a promo on this episode and say that my family deserted me, but the nation is my new family. It never airs, this promo. And we're just going to stop referring to it as the Nation of Domination. Now it's just called the Nation. Mm-hmm. Speaking of things that maybe need a new paint of coat, as we like to say, Mick Foley comes out on the program as Mick Foley. I think this is the first time we ever saw just quote unquote Mick Foley. We'd seen Mankind before. We'd seen Dude Love before. We'd seen Cactus Jack before, but Mick Foley comes out and complains about not being the number one contender, challenges Terry Funk to a False Count Anywhere match, and says he will never do the Dude Love character again. He doesn't want to embarrass himself dancing around with strippers, and he's going to throw the Dude Love outfit in Vince McMahon's face. And Vince tells him if he destroys Funk, he would become the top contender. And then he slaps him in his face. And Austin comes out, chases McMahon away, and then Austin destroys the Love Shack set. It's really a great segment, and it sort of sets up the end of the show very, very nicely. What did you think of the creative of, because we've asked, and Mick talks about this on his podcast, that we've asked the audience for a lot. He's Mankind, but he's also Dude Love, but he's also Cactus Jack. And now, okay, here's the real life character, and he doesn't want to do one of these characters anymore. This is kind of a wrestling history here. I mean, there's not, as far as I can recall, ever been an angle like this ever before.
No, but I don't know that there's ever been a talent like Mick Foley that could pull it off. I think that Mick was unique in his portrayal of each of those characters. They were all the same, yet very different. And the one thing they had in common was the mind and the heart of Mick Foley. That's what we were trying to tell here. And I think that Mick Foley did a superb job of being able to separate the characters, yet keep them all connected. And that's a hard thing to do.
Let's talk about Jerry Briscoe. There's going to be a great vignette on Jerry Briscoe that airs on this episode. We're trying to show him as a family man, as a personality piece. We see footage of the body shop business in Tampa and his credentials, professionally, and certainly his wrestling history. But there you see, he's even, resting at home with his wife and kids. And this feels like if it was in the 80s, it would be a babyface promo. But because we know he's a stooge and he's sitting here saying Vince McMahon is the greatest person I've ever known, it feels like, a new era of, hey, here's a nice guy doing nice things, but boy, we hate him. He's a bad guy. The attitude era is upon us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it got to plug Briscoe Brothers Body Shop. It's worth the drive.
It's so fun to think about.
Again, you had these built-in characters, but nobody really knew who Jerry Briscoe was. Your diehards did, but the audience really didn't know who Jerry Briscoe was. He was an office guy.
Right.
This was an opportunity to tell that story of Jerry Briscoe in a way that in this day and age, in the late 90s, authority was out the window, and the guys that were bucking the authority were the heroes, and authority was just a bunch of faceless, nameless people that are ruining everyone else's lives. This put a face and a name with the person that was ruining everybody's lives. And Jerry was just Jerry. That was just Jerry.
Sable is going to challenge Mark Mero to a match, and Meltzer would report that this is probably going to be the spot where Mero gets a new valet. We know that's going to wind up being Miss Jackie, but did you think, just based on, it being a man and a woman, there's got to be some physicality, so that means he's going to need a new lady by his side. If it wasn't Miss Jackie, who else do you think it could have been?
Who knows? Could have been Luna.
Oh, wow.
Luna would have been great, but come on, Jackie's perfect.
She is 100%. I recently talked to Jeff Jarrett about this time period.
About Jackie?
Well, kinda. We talked about how he's going to wrestle Mark Mero, and he does it twice in one night because they tried on 3 separate occasions to have Steve Blackman get involved in the match, but he missed his time cue all 3 times. And Blackman is still very new to the wrestling business. So I'm just curious how upset. It's a taped show, but the reality is almost none of this stuff airs. Vince is just like, let's just scratch the whole thing. Do you remember this segment?
Yeah, shit happens.
Yeah.
And really that's it, man. Shit just happens sometimes. And you have to cut bait, next, move on. Not going to do it. And sometimes it is as simple as that in the moment.
Here's something that you wouldn't have had on your bingo cards a few years prior. The New Age Outlaws are going to team up with Triple H
in Philly?
China. Huh?
Were we in Philly?
Not yet.
N32.
You got DX on one side and you got LOD teaming up with the Disciples of Apocalypse. It's going to be an 8-man tag, but China's involved, and the match is really designed to help get her over. You want to show off how big she is and have everybody that she can work with start selling for her. She's going to pull off a Hurricane Rana. And listen, it's easy to be critical of the Harris brothers or the Road Warriors, but man, their willingness to put over China here. I mean, I think if just a few years prior, that would have been pretty unlikely. But here we are, man. She's getting hotter and hotter, and folks are with it. Was this like in hindsight, this feels like a major moment, does it not?
Feels like it because it is.
Right.
It's a big deal. And there was a groundswell around China. The audience wanted to see her do more. They wanted more physicality with the men. And we were happy to deliver that because it got people buzzing.
Talk to me a little bit about the 2 vignettes for new characters. I always loved the era where right after WrestleMania, we start to see new stories and new characters emerge, and 2 are going to happen here. One is Adam Copeland as Edge. These Edge vignettes are, well, maybe hard to explain. We don't really know anything. We just know it looks cool and he looks cool, but that's kind of it. But maybe we understand a little too much about the Val Venus character. Val Venus is going to debut his character here with Jenna Jameson.
That's my backyard.
Tell me about shooting these vignettes and how much fun you had hanging out with Jenna.
Yeah, that's a touchy subject. I think, what year was this? Was after WrestleMania 12, right?
This is after 14.
Okay. So I was married. Okay. So Russo came up with the Val Venus idea. I think everybody had the same feeling about the Val Venus character. Creative, good character. I didn't hate the character, but I did see a shelf life. I thought, okay, you can do this for a while, but I don't see Val Venus porn star in the main event at WrestleMania.
No.
So we're already handicapping that character.
Right.
And I liked Sean Morley a lot. And I liked the Val Venus character. I thought that it was entertaining, thought it was fun. And the vignettes were creative and entertaining as well. Thought they were good. They were fun. Come on, man. It's tongue in cheek. Jenna, through Paul Heyman, wanted to be in the business. And Paul was like, hey, man, Jenna Jameson would like to do something. And like, okay, so I would talk to she was on the West Coast, and I would talk to her, but she would often call late at night so it's, midnight my time, it's 9:00 her time. And we would talk, and I got calls all hours of every day, every time, and all stuff. And my wife knew that was Jenna. Didn't need to know any more than that.
Right.
What was her name? We were talking about business. So Jenna came in to do these vignettes, told Vince that, hey, we literally have the #1 female adult star in the world. And she's like agreed to do these kind of endorse Val and do these vignettes. And I had her in we had this, in our master bedroom had our bathtub was kind of overlooking our backyard and everything, and kind of walk up a few steps and shit. And it was a real nice bathtub. We shot her in there. We shot her in my bedroom. And then we shot in those hedges right there where you saw earlier with Val and Jenna. And she had to walk across my lawn, which was the length of a football field, to get to the back where that was shot, with nothing but these bandoleros on. There you go. And as she was coming out of our spare bedroom, my wife looked at me and says, so how do you know this person?
That's a fair question.
I said, what person? She's like, well, Jenna. I said, she just wants to get in the business. And what does she do exactly? So she does videos and things like that. She says, what kind of videos?
Yeah.
Like, adult videos. She says, you brought a porn star to our house?
What's wrong with that?
And put her in my bed?
What's wrong with that?
Well, I'll tell you what, Conrad, why don't you bring a porn star home to your house
Okay.
Put her in your bed. Put her in your bathtub. Or better yet, do it this way. Let me rephrase that. Put her in Megan's bed. Put her in Megan's bathtub. I'm just telling you, sometimes there's but Steph, the funny thing was Steph really liked her. She's a very nice lady. She's tremendous.
Super talented too.
Yeah. But, she just, every stereotype that you would want to have as a holier than thou, Jenna strips it away. I mean, she really does. She's a sweetheart of a person, and, is what it is. But she's a nice person.
Well, speaking of hardcore, we got a hardcore main event here. Foley and Funk are going to brawl all over the place.
Did you say Foley and Fuck?
Funk?
Oh, okay.
I think fucking was the last segment.
Your mother's a whore.
Now, will you stop it? Jenna is a nice lady. So Foley is going to pile drive Funk through a table. There's going to be ECW chants. Maybe the biggest highlight, though, is Terry Funk moonsaulting off a mezzanine. I can't believe that's a real thing, but he's climbing up, doing like New Jack stuff, except down he comes. Middle-aged and crazy. Woo. Pat Patterson's the referee. Stone Cold Steve Austin is drinking beer at ringside, doing color commentary. Thankfully, mercifully, it ends. Foley is your winner. Austin, of course, is going to make his appearance known. And he does it because, well, the beating continues after the bell. And then he being Austin, throws beer in the face of Mick Foley. Mick immediately puts the mandible claw on what he thinks is Steve Austin. It's actually Pat Patterson. And it's a fun way to end the episode when we see Vince McMahon come out to the Dude Love music. And remember, at the top of the show, Mick said, "I'm done dancing with second-rate strippers, and I'm never wearing this gear again." You're never going to hear from Dude Love for a long, long time. And by the end of the show, he's the number one contender. He's pleased Vince McMahon. He's getting another title shot. So Vince comes out dancing, and they're having a good time to the Dude Love music, and he gives Dude back his gear. Nice writing, nice fun show here. And seeing Vince dancing with the girls here, just hilarious stuff. Like, anytime we get Vince dancing, I'm for it.
There you go.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was taking you on that roller coaster ride. And I think that, again, hats off to Russo. Damn good show. Damn good, roller coaster riding.
We've got Dory Funk's Funkin' Dojo that's happening in this era. And boy, there's a cast of characters here. The future Rikishi is here. It's written in the Observer that the idea is he's going to lead a Samoan gang and maybe be managed by Alpha. They would also report that John Tenta was there, and the plan is to put him in a mask and have him feud with Austin. Paul Silva is a 7'3" former basketball player from Brazil who's going to wind up being in the Oddities. Aaron O'Grady is going to be the future Crash Holly. Vic Grimes, Sean Stasiak, Matt Bloom, who we know these days is doing things down at the Performance Center. The future Test, Andrew Martin is here. Emery Hale, who's going to go on to be the Wall in WCW, is here. Draws is here. Dan Severn is there. And David Heath, who's going to become Gangrel, all here, a part of this camp. But the thing that jumps off the page to me the most, the idea that there was at least consideration once upon a time for Tenta under a mask working with Austin. Now, we know Tenta did go under a mask for the Oddities. But as a killer heel, could that have worked? I mean, it did for Hogan. Could it have worked with Austin?
Possibly. But I don't think anybody was looking for John to come back and work with Steve at that time.
Right.
That's probably one of them rumored innuendo and just lies that Dave Meltzer likes to write.
Well, let's talk about Steven Regal. The WWF is going to take WCW to court to help get Steven Regal out of his 120-day non-compete clause. WCW just drops the case completely before the judge even has a chance to rule on it. So I guess this makes way for the real man's man. What did you like about Regal's game? What did you see him in this era?
I liked Regal from the first day that I ever saw him on WCW programming. God, he was a kid, but he looked older. And I was a fan early on of people like Jeff Ports and Les Thornton. That style, that old British style of wrestling. And I thought Steve had that. However, he was young and good. So I was excited to have Steve. I thought Steve would be a great addition to the team.
Fun little note here in the Observer, quote, Dennis Brent will be taking over the magazine duties from Russo, who will be spending more time writing the television show. If he's in any way responsible for the Raw product of late, then he's doing one hell of a job. Lynn Brent, the wife of Dennis, who worked as a PR assistant for WCW until last week, will also be joining the WWF in a similar role. I read that, A, because I like to see Meltzer give Russo a little bit of credit and props. But B, I want to hear more about Dennis and Lynn Brent. What can you tell us about them? We haven't spent much time talking about them on the show.
Not a whole lot to talk about. I mean, I think that Dennis, they were friends of JR's.
Okay.
And JR brought him in to be his assistants, basically. Super, super nice people. Very, very quiet. Very, very nice. Really, really, really nice people. I think the wrestling business kind of swallowed them up sometimes. But other than being friends of JR's and all that, I think that Dennis's claim to fame really is his relationship with Nolan Ryan. Dennis has the largest collection of Nolan Ryan memorabilia anywhere, and he and Nolan are good friends, and has managed a lot of stuff for Nolan Ryan. So that's what I think is Dennis's true passion.
Let's talk about Victor Quinones. It's reported in the Observer that you and old Victor are put in charge of the new WWF Latino project that we know is going to become Super Astros. How does that deal come together, and why are you working with Victor on this? It feels like you'd be doing different stuff. I don't know why, but what do you remember about Super Astros?
Well, we had, the initiative to go out and produce Latino product. We met with Telemundo. We met with Univision. Univision came to the table with a deal for us for a 30-minute show to air on Sundays. I think it was at 11:30 a.m. Great time slot. Wanted it all to be, Latino wrestlers. So, it's funny when you're dealing with a network sometimes, especially in the case of Univision, and just what it is that they're looking for. And they wanted, it's Hispanic in nature, but yet how do you say this? They don't particularly want Puerto Rican Hispanic.
I got you.
They don't necessarily want Cuban Hispanic. They lean toward Mexican Hispanics, but they like the Spanish from Spain with a Mexican accent. I think I have that right. So trying to find the right Mexican that it could clearly speak the Spaniard Spanish. It definitely did not like Portuguese, did not want that Spanish spoken on their network. They're all different dialects. It's all the same language, but very different dialects. It's kind of like you doing something with Marv Albert. You have a different dialect. Marv has a Long Island dialect. It's different. They wanted a more uniform dialect for their play-by-play people, but even their characters. So we tried to lean more on Mexican talent. We had some great Puerto Rican talent as well. And it was, look, it was a space that I knew from my days in Texas and just growing up on Lucha Libre. Victor was embedded in it. Victor, booked, he had his own promotion in Puerto Rico, plus he booked talent into EMLL and all over the place. So Victor was very well connected in that regard. And we got Negro Casas from EMLL to book the talent and help us with, writing the shows and the angles and things of that nature. But, it was fun. It's just you had a lot of masters to serve. And I think Vince saw it one way. Univision saw it one way. I saw it another way. And the show debuted and did record numbers on Univision. I think we did 25 times what the normal programming did in that slot. But in the end, Univision didn't really like it. They felt that it was still an American produced television show that featured Mexican wrestlers or Hispanic wrestlers. And they wanted a Mexican produced show, produced by Mexicans for Mexicans. They felt that it was too clean, too polished, and felt that it was not a Spanish produced show. Even though it did great ratings, advertisers didn't want to buy it.
Well, I'll tell you what I wanted to buy. Over the Edge inviting to the Over the Edge show in Milwaukee, Crusher and Mad Dog Vachon. I liked in this era. It feels like you did a lot of this in 96, 97, 98, inviting the legends to come down. And every now and again, hey, they'll let you use their leg. So it was kind of a good deal.
Exactly. Love seeing Mad Dog. Crusher, man. I didn't know Crusher that well, but Crusher, it was all about Crusher every time. Anytime Crusher had an idea, it was like, hey, you got my polka music? I like to dance the polka and beat people up, and that was it.
We're going to change the name of this new Japanese group that we've seen on TV. They were Club Kamikaze. Now they're going to be called Kai and Tai. Over in Japan, they're going to be Kai and Tai DX. Why the name change here?
I think they liked it, felt it was more universal.
Okay.
It was something they came up with.
Let's talk about Raw the next week. We get a 4.72 rating, 7.05 share, and that's head to head. Nitro does a 4.26. So you guys win. You're going to draw first blood because this is super funny. You guys flew DX to Atlanta to the headquarters in Smyrna, Georgia. Hunter Hearst Helmsley is going to be here poking fun of the no trespassing sign. And apparently Nick Lambrose, according to the Observer, who's the attorney for WCW, calls 911 to try to get them arrested for trespassing and lewd actions. And the police show up.
It was actually a security guard. I heard the 911 tape.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What do you remember of this when you go to the headquarters here?
They called 911 and said that their building was being assaulted by a group of individuals with weapons.
Oh my goodness.
Because we had like the bandoleros, we had the big cannon on the back of the Jeep.
No. This is, I'm not talking about when you're showing up at the arena.
Dude, this was in Smyrna. We had it in Smyrna.
Oh man, that's hilarious. You guys, as the so tell me what happens when the police shows up, because it says in the Observer, while they weren't arrested, they were cited and detained for a few minutes to a half hour, depending on which story you believe. They also went to CNN for a completely lame skit where they asked to visit Ted Turner, and their own camera people got scared and wouldn't film them. And the segment largely saw them hang out with a few dozen fans on a lunch break, crotch chopping themselves. All right, so he's being a little critical of it, but
Yeah,
I guess
he's a fucking idiot and he wasn't there and doesn't know what he's talking about. So he's getting his probably from Nick Ambrose and somebody from WCW, his gossip with their slant. So we went to Smyrna. I had already arranged for security. I had spoken to the Smyrna Police Department, told them what we were going to do, and I just said I just want to have police with us, which same thing we did the week before.
Right.
Where we had police with us. You always have the local police with you. So I had a couple of local cops with me in Smyrna, told them what we were going to do, and they called 911. I thought, this is great because cops are going to come. We're going to have a spectacle. And the little security guard, he's all excited and he's like, no, y'all stay. And it's like, yeah, we're not going to let them shoot us. We're going to shoot them. And so we did everything we could do because they had shut the door. And now we're going back to our van. We're going to leave. Here comes about, 4 or 5 cruisers. Sirens, lights are blaring. I'm shooting all this. And they get out. They're putting us up against the van and all this other stuff. And they come out, and my security guy, my Smyrna police officer, says, he goes walking up real casually to him, goes, hey, man, I got this. Everything's cool. Nothing's going on here. And everybody relaxes, and I'm with him now. DX guys are back in a van and making smart ass comments, and I go, turn around going, guys, chill the fuck out. Let me find out what's going on here. And we get there. Mike Weber was there, and they're kind of screaming, we want them arrested. They're trespassing. We want them arrested.
Wait. Mike Weber was screaming he wanted you arrested?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so, and the little security guy too, the little security guy was like Barney Fife. It was hilarious. I mean, he was so over the top and literally jumping up and down and his arms going, we want arrest, all this stuff. They pointed that gun at me, all this stuff. So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to it, not saying a word. And they're, after about the 5th or 6th time I hear they wanted us arrested, I like get a smile on my face and go, yeah, arrest us, please. Put my hands out, cuff me. Yeah, arrest us. And Mike Weber's face went white. Like, oh shit, he wants to be arrested.
Right.
Wait, they want to be arrested. Wait. No. Don't arrest them. And I'm like, no, go ahead. You're right. Arrest us. We're trespassing. Please arrest us. And my guy now is going like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's trying to talk to his boss now who's there, who shows up. And we explain what we were doing and all this stuff. And he looks to his guy, the boss of the police, and says, you knew all this was going to take place? Which he did. And he says, well, I didn't know they were going to do all this. I said, well, what do we do? We came up. We knocked on the door. We had gone. We tried to get a meeting with them last week. They wouldn't meet with us. So we came to their offices to try and meet with somebody. And, that's all. Yes, they're dressed a little strange, but that's how they dress. It's DX. Now, the head of the Smyrna Police Department did not have a sense of humor.
Okay.
and he wants to throw us all in jail.
That's not good.
No, it would have been great. It would have been awesome. Because the tape and all that shit had like already separated from us, but they were still shooting it. And I knew they were still shooting it from their car, but they weren't a part of us. So they could have shot us getting arrested and going all the way to jail. I would have been out in 10 minutes with calling the lawyer and everything. We would have been fine. But this cop, finally, when he's ready to release us, he says, all right, what are you guys doing? I said, sir, we got a flight to Baltimore. We've got a show in Baltimore tonight. We are getting out of here. We're heading to the airport. He says, why don't you get in your car? Why don't you drive to the Atlanta airport, get on your plane. Do not stop and collect $200. Do not stop, take a piss, get gas, anything. Get your ass on that plane, get the hell out of here. Yes, sir. So we leave and we go to CNN Tower. Now, the unique thing about CNN Tower was I had police escort in CNN Tower too. For those that know, in Atlanta, CNN Tower, there's a Atlanta police substation in CNN Tower. Guess where my police came from in Atlanta? CNN Tower.
Oh, my.
They walked out, met us, and escorted us in. And I had already done my homework. I had called, and I had a recording of the phone call asking if we could record inside CNN. And they said yes. I said, anything? They said, anything. I said, we don't need a permit or anything to record in? I said, nope. So we come in. I had like a 8mm. Then X-Pac had another camera. We had our camera crew. And as we get in there, it is lunchtime, and there's people hanging over in CNN. It's like an atrium, and there's people up on the top floors and everything that are looking down. And one of the executive vice presidents of Turner came down when he saw Hunter, knew him from when he was there before.
Oh, wow.
And started handing out CNN passes to us. I still have mine somewhere, but gave us all CNN passes. We requested to speak to Ted Turner. Now their security comes, not the police. Turner security comes, and they tell us you can't be shooting in here.
Right.
Now I've got a camera, and I'm basically interviewing this guy. I said, okay, let me get this straight. What's your name? That tells you his name. I said, okay. So Leroy, you're telling me that we can't shoot in here. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. You got to stop shooting. So I can't do this. And I'm panning around and shooting everything. He says, no. So I'm fidgeting with my thing. I said, here, do you recognize this voice and who this person is? He goes, no, I don't know who that is. I said, well, let me tell you who it is. That's people from customer service here at CNN Center. This is whatever her name was, blah, blah, blah. And she says that we can't. So can you find her and bring her out here? Because until we can get this straight, we're not going anywhere. Well, now we've got a buzz, and we've got people hanging over the atrium that are doing the DX chop.
Oh, my.
To DX. And it's lunchtime. So people are having lunch, and they're all like, yeah, suck it, suck it. In the midst of all this, the crew gets a phone call from their boss. He gives it to Sean Selman, which shout out to Sean Selman. Hopefully Sean's out of surgery. I hope you're listening to this, Sean. Had a successful surgery the other day. But Sean says, hey, Bruce, it's the people that own the equipment. They want to pull this chute. So they can't pull the chute. We pay for this. So I get on the phone with this woman, and what it was they had a lot of contract work with Turner. So they didn't want the Turner people were calling them going, hey, your people are here shooting. You better get them the fuck out of here. So I talked to her. I said, hi, how you doing? She's like, oh, yeah. No, it's all good. Yeah. And I walk away. And she says, I need you to end the shoot. I need you to have those guys get back immediately back here to the studio. I said, you got it. I'll end it right now. I hang up the phone and I go back. They're still shooting and I don't say anything. And the guy says, he goes, hey, you talk to my boss? I said, yeah, everything's cool, man. It's all good. She's just said, be sure and come back to the studio after we finish up here. But we got some more to do. And we continued to do it. And then the guy realizes he doesn't have his phone. And I refuse to give it back to him. So I'll give it back to you at the end of the shoot, dude. Come on, man. Shit, you about killed our take back there when your phone rang. Just keep shooting. So we shot for about another hour and interviewed the folks in Turner's office. And we actually got somebody to go up and tell Ted Turner we were there. But, yeah, we had the police from Turner, the substation there in CNN Center. And then we went out and shot off the cannon again and went to the Atlanta airport. So when we get to the airport, they were looking for us at the airport. So I got everybody on the plane as quickly as I could because they couldn't come on the plane at that point. So we made it. Made it back to Baltimore. Everything intact. But there were a lot more than a dozen fucking people there. And I would bet you there were probably 60, 70 people just hanging over the atrium from their offices up above and doing the DX shop and shit. It was a spectacle.
Well, of course, you're doing all this during the day, so this is not live. And by the time Nitro goes on the air, Bischoff knows that you guys have tried to invade the show last week, and now you've been to Atlanta, and he's going to go on TV and challenge Vince McMahon to a fight and says he wants to knock him out. He's inviting him to the pay-per-view. And he makes it clear for people not to buy the pay-per-view thinking they're going to see that confrontation. He's doing this because he doesn't want anyone to misconstrue it as false advertising. But he says Vince McMahon isn't going to show up. But if he does, I'd knock him out. So what do you think of, I mean, obviously you're poking the bear here with these invasion angles. What do you think of Eric's response to challenge Vince McMahon to a fight?
Jumping the shark.
Yeah.
Silly. He knew Vince wouldn't come. Come on, that's like, me challenging P. Diddy. He ain't gonna come.
Oh, listen to you.
Well, if he did, he'd win, but I mean, he ain't gonna come.
You're a 3-time karate black belt Hall of Famer.
First of all, I'm 4-time.
Sorry.
4-time Hall of Famer.
That's not bad. It's not bad.
Sometimes I wonder, Connie.
What's Vince's reaction like when he hears of this challenge? I'm sure you guys at least discuss it. What's he thinking?
When's our pay-per-view?
Yeah. This Sunday.
Yeah. He's like, I'll meet him in a parking lot.
Right.
That's about it.
Fight Plus is the ultimate digital platform for live sports and entertainment, and they're now offering a free 7-day trial at tryfight.com. Fight Plus is packed with a premium live event schedule, over 1,000 hours of live action every year, and a library of more than 4,000 hours on demand, plus exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. Fight is a great partner of ours. They support us, so let's support them. Give that free 7-day trial a shot, and you'll be a member for life. That's tryfight.com. tryfite.com. As
I understand it, this this is the taped Raw is where this airs, your skits. And then obviously he's doing his Nitro thing.
And it was great because it got people tuned over to us.
It did. It's pretty funny to think that this was ever really a thing, but on commentary, now remember, this is a taped Raw. You guys are going to have JR talking about, the industrial park where the headquarters were for WCW, sort of poking fun of that. And he's talking about the fail. Yeah. Well, there's the whole MTV debacle that WCW had just had. They were going to do live wrestling on MTV. It gets rained out. It's a torrential downpour. It's an embarrassment. So JR is going to make fun of that. And he's going to talk about, this isn't the seniors tour, even though we just had 53-year-old Terry Funk main event Monday Night Raw the week before. And Cornette is getting lots of digs in at Eric Bischoff. I mean, this feels more like the war than ever before, literally, right?
Yeah, it was heating up. It was heating up because we had, turned the corner. So, business was good and ratings were good, and they were now chasing. So yeah, it's a good time.
The next live Raw, we see the show in Baltimore. It's the new Dude Love. He's lightened his hair a little bit. He's got a well-groomed beard. He's gotten his new teeth in, and he's dressing in a suit and tie. And this is all because he's now the corporate puppet, if you will, of Vince McMahon, and even wearing glasses. I mean, this is not Cactus Jack. This is not Mankind. This is a totally different character. Briscoe and Patterson are going to be announced as being the timekeeper and ring announcer. And then when Vince goes to introduce the referee, he goes to the back because no one comes out. So Pat Patterson comes down, grabs the mic, and tries to say best there is, best there was, best there ever will be. But of course, Pat didn't say it exactly like that. And now here comes Vince McMahon in a boy's small referee shirt. Just a great segment. We're stacking the deck against Steve Austin. This is Mr. McMahon and the Stooges at their best, is it not?
Classic TV.
It is.
Yeah, that was just classic. Summed it all up in one segment.
Speaking of Steve Austin, we see inside of this episode of Raw a plug for Steve Austin being a part of Celebrity Deathmatch. That was an amazing piece of pop culture at the time, and it showed you just how popular the WWE and that Stone Cold character were. But he's such a focal point of the Celebrity Deathmatch. This is new heights for the WWE, is it not?
Yeah, I had no idea what Celebrity Deathmatch was.
It's a claymation thing, and it was just kids.
Yeah, I know, but at the time I didn't know. I thought,
right.
What are we doing here?
Right.
And then kind of went back and watched a few and saw where they were going with it.
Well, what did you think of where Al Snow had been going with it? He had gotten himself over when he was looking for a fresh paint of coat down in ECW with Head. What does everybody want? What does everybody need? What did you think of this Head gimmick the first time you saw it?
Entertaining. I thought that, it was a beautiful example of someone reinventing themselves in Al Snow, and damn proud of him because it was a fun deal. Was it edgy? Is it something that he was going to be able to do for the next 10, 20 years? No. But at the time, I thought it was great. Very well done.
Something else that's great. Sable is going to powerbomb Mark Mero on TV, and she gets a freaking gigantic pop when it happens. And I know in hindsight, this might not feel like a big deal, but buddy, it was. There was not a lot of man and woman stuff. And when there was, which was just a couple of weeks ago, really, it was China. But Sable getting the revenge on her husband here, the comeuppance, the power bomb. Man, Mark Mero, such a good sport here. Obviously, all that money's coming to the same household, but not a lot of guys probably would have been up for this. He pulled it off.
Pulled it off tremendously. Takes two to tango, and they did a hell of a job with that, man. The audience was in love with Sable.
We're going to put DX in a bit of a feud with the Nation. It'll start with
Domination. Nation. Oh, sorry.
Hunter and Owen. Really good stuff. We're trying something different here with Dustin. He's going to come out, burn his gold dust outfit, and blame McMahon for everything. He's trying to do a babyface turn, but it's just not clicking with the audience. I know we need something new for Dustin, but did you think this whole religious concept was a fit for Dustin? I mean, I don't know. Seems a little odd.
I hated it.
Yeah, I did too.
Hated it. It's funny. My whole entire Brother Love character is quasi based on religion. I don't like anything that's real religion.
Right.
I don't think you should go there.
Agree. The main event of this Monday Night Raw, we see Austin teaming with Vince McMahon. It's Vince's first official match ever against Rock and D'Lo Brown. What a spot for D'Lo Brown to be in here, by the way. He goes to a no contest. Austin never tags out. Vince finally clotheslines him, and it turns into a big schmoz with the Nation, DX, Dude Love, and even Dustin coming out. Maybe Vince just like wearing extra small shirts on TV. Maybe that's why.
Custom made, man.
I want to talk about a backstage incident that I found interesting. There's a show in Hamilton, Ontario that Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown were scheduled for, but because they were detained so long at the border, they decided to no-show, and they're heavily fined. This is all according to the Observer. Do you remember this?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Do not remember.
There is a fallout from this whole Bischoff grandiose challenge, the grandstand challenge, if you will. Your old pal Jerry McDevitt would write a threatening legal letter to Bischoff, and the WWF is going to complain to the cable companies, saying they're trying to use bait and switch tactics on the consumers, promoting Slamboree. And by the end of the week, of course, Mean Gene or Jim Ross are just going off on each other on the hotlines. Pretty fun stuff. And Bischoff, in response, shows up at the Thunder taping and reads Jerry McDevitt's letter, then does a training montage showing him preparing for the match that's clearly not going to take place. I like that Bischoff sort of responded and doubled down on it. We know in the end, Vince doesn't go. Stephanie's graduating the same day, but this was a fun time.
I mean, he seriously contemplated it.
All right, listen, we can't see the eye rolls on the audio version, but
yeah, but you can.
I can. Yes, sir. I can. Right. You're going to have McMahon do a response online. I consider Eric Bischoff's challenge a cheap and desperate tactic to increase WCW pay-per-view buys. I will not do anything to help WCW increase their pay-per-view buys. Therefore, I will not be appearing at Turner's next pay-per-view as invited. However, if Mr. Bischoff is hell-bent on fighting me, then such a fight can be arranged at any time in any parking lot in the country, void of television cameras, photographers, and public announcement. And he misspells Eric Bischoff's name multiple times here, which makes me laugh. The next week, we are doing Raw in Nashville. It's on the 18th of May, and boy, it's a sellout. $11,528, paying a city record of $241,804. You're just setting records every which way. And here we start by announcing that Austin is barred from the building. And Austin says, well, I'd rather get drunk in my car than go in and get in a fight. And then Vince calls out Dustin Runnels, cuts a promo on him about dumping the Goldust character, puts him in a match with Dude Love, where if Goldust wins, he gets a title shot against Austin, but if he loses, he won't get paid for the next 30 days, but he still has to work. I at least like that we're trying Dustin in a more prominent role. I mean, it feels like the Goldust character has not been nearly as prominent as maybe it was in 95 and 96, but being involved in main event schmozzes and working with Austin and McMahon, we're at least trying something here, right?
Yeah, they were trying.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think it kind of ends there because the need for Goldust was due to lack of, I don't think Dustin, connected. But Goldust did.
Well, the Val Venus character had connected, at least on vignettes. He's going to make his television debut here, beating Scorpio in 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Meltzer would have this pretty hilarious write-up. He wins with a splash off the top called, inappropriately enough, the money shot. They tried to work a Japan style. Venus had potential, but was pretty green. He got a big reaction from the vignettes coming out, and the people at first reacted to him like he was a star, and women screamed, but the fans weren't into the match at all. It basically did the Rick Rude hip gyrations and tried to wrestle. Scorpio did some nice kicks. When you actually get to see not just the vignettes, but the full presentation, the music, the ring entrance, the attire, the match, the mannerisms. Did you think you guys had nailed the Val Venus character as, much as you could? Because we both agree there was probably a ceiling to that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it as much as we possibly could.
Right.
And it was what it was. And Val was still very young in the business and still green and needed to learn a lot. But at the same time, it takes time for a character to get over. I do think he was presented like a star. But, here we were.
Well, where we are is the storyline continues with Sable and Mark Mero. Mark is going to reveal that Sable has a contract with him and he's holding her hostage to this contract. Sonny is not with LOD for their match against Chains and Skull. And it's announced that LOD will soon have a third partner. Austin finally gets to beat up a security guard, comes into the building and challenges Vince, Pat, and Briscoe. And that leads to Pat and Jerry wrestling Austin in a street fight in the main event, which is super fun, just as fun as you'd imagine. Dude Love gets a win over Dustin Runnels. Austin gets arrested for attacking that security guard. So what do you know? The main event is now in jeopardy. You guys, you think in hindsight, you did too much maybe with Austin and the police?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was overkill.
Yeah. It felt like at least once a month my man was in cuffs.
Yeah, well, it happens.
Well, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong.
What, that Austin?
Well, sometimes families and people and just certain individuals have a habit of getting put in handcuffs.
Okay. Dr. Charles Worsley then reveals, without a shadow of doubt, Paul Bear is indeed Kane's father. Bear then called Undertaker's mother a 2-bit whore. So Undertaker naturally comes sprinting out, attacks Kane. I don't know why he's attacking Kane. Eventually, he went after Bear after he's chokeslammed Kane. Kane's going to come back and chokeslam Undertaker. Then Vader comes in and attacks Kane, and Undertaker chases Bear down the ramp. Somehow he never catches him.
Look, Paul was wily. He was crafty, sudden. Well, just quick. He was sudden.
I love it.
Like lightning.
Do you ever
Boom,
think
he's here, then he's over there. Oh, shit, where'd he go? How'd he get there? Oh, my.
Did you ever think you'd hear the phrase 2-bit whore on a wrestling program before?
Sure.
Wow. Okay. You think we'll see that on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown anytime soon? 2-bit
Probably
whore.
not.
I don't think so. Finally, the match happens. It's Austin versus Briscoe and Patterson. Sergeant Slaughter is your referee. Man, this is super fun. Especially with the benefit of hindsight. I love seeing Slaughter in the stripes. And I'm positive that Briscoe and Patterson just love the idea of we're working with the top star in the main event of Monday Night Raw and hamming it up. This was great gaga, was it not?
Goddamn wrestling match. Jerry Briscoe's like a fucking national All-American champion. Jerry still probably stretches.
What's funny too is throw that still up there of the fan jumping the rail, because a fan jumps the rail in a mask and it's a Steve Austin mask. It's actually Vince McMahon dressed up like Steve Austin. This is just great stuff. The go home edition of Raw is going to be taped in Chattanooga the very next day. It's another sellout. Edge gets another dark match here. He pins Buddy Landell. And Austin is going to get his comeuppance on McMahon, Patterson, and Briscoe, getting them arrested for assault and then obstruction of justice. I do love the idea of these guys getting arrested for once. Maybe the overuse of police, maybe it had a reason. And then LOD introduces a new partner, Puke. That's right. Darren Drozdov is given the nickname Hawk, Animal, and Puke. He's going to come to the ring and supposedly puke. And they beat DOA when Puke pins Chains with a power bomb. No heat at all. Bruce, just one time. Get us with that Vince. He's gonna. Why not?
I can't. Well, okay. Now you got to get into my medical shit, man. That's like a HIPAA thing. I'm having my throat and my tongue, they're being lasered, so kind of affects that kind of shit.
You got a laser tongue?
As soon as I'm in the ground, but any of the gurgling shit I can't do right now.
Okay.
Can't do for like 9 weeks.
I love Vince McMahon overreacting. And he's in the back of the cop car here and he's telling the police, you can't arrest me. My lawyer's Jerry McDivitt. And just seeing Jerry McDivitt's name dropped on TV just tickles me.
Well, true.
It's still funny. I don't know why. It's just funny. Jackal's going to come out and do an interview with Crackhead Bob and Hank, the Angry Drunken Dwarf. This is real. These are regular members of the Howard Stern Show. Jackal's new group, according to Dave Meltzer, is going to be a collection of human oddities. Hank did an interview and was swearing like crazy. Jackal brought up Hank winning the best looking award on the internet and talked about how people on the internet make fun of people like this, and Americans do. His new group consists of Princess Luna, Golga, and Paul Silva, who, Golga's going to pin Thrasher in a horrible match here. This is the birth of the oddities. But what do you think of the way to introduce it being, hey, let's bring in some members of the Whack Pack from the Howard Stern Show. And by the way, I just want to remind everybody, we're not doing this in New Jersey. We're not doing this in Pennsylvania. We're not doing this in New York. We're doing it in Chattanooga, where I would bet they didn't even have Howard Stern on the radio. But still, the fans at home, if they're big Howard fans, they're probably excited to see these guys. What do you think of Crackhead Bob and Hank the Angry Drunken Dwarf showing up for Monday Night Raw?
Horrible.
Yeah.
Hated it. It was lowbrow. It was forgettable. It was, you're playing to a small audience in the Howard Stern audience. But Vince Russo loved Howard Stern. And he loved that shock shit and, the gross stuff. And to me, this was not one of the better things. This was just cheap, gross, just didn't work. And maybe it's just, and look, now, first one to admit, I was not a Howard Stern fan, so I didn't get it, didn't like it. But I think that for the majority of our audience, I think most of them didn't get it either.
Did Tenta get the Golga gimmick?
Yeah. Yeah, he had fun with it as best he could. Just was what it was.
What about Don Callis? Why don't you think he lasted in this gimmick? The leader of the oddities.
You know how I've said sometimes that if you push someone too hard, too strong, sometimes they can be turned.
Yeah.
I think Chief J Strongbow pushing Callis as hard as he didn't help him any. I think that his inability to get along with some of the other talent, at least that perception, I don't know if he had an inability to do it. I thought that Don had a lot of talent. I thought he was a nice guy. I thought he had a hell of a lot of talent. I just don't know that he really connected with it. And the Truth Commission was so-so, and I thought this was less than so-so. Now, as much as I did not like Insane Clown Posse, I thought Insane Clown Posse with the oddities did work. So, go figure.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson with SaveWithConrad.com. You've heard me bragging on the podcast for years about helping people save money on their current house, but did you know that I could help you with your next house as well? That's right, we can get you into your next house with zero down. No money down loan programs are still available, and I know it sounds too good to be true, but we can do it for you. And by the way, home ownership is more affordable than you might think. We routinely turn renters into homeowners, and we hear back that their new house payment is more affordable than what they were paying in rent. Why would you keep doing that? Stop throwing your money away, paying for someone else's mortgage, and start building wealth for your family. And let my family help at SaveWithConrad.com. You don't need perfect credit to do this. We can improve credit scores down to the 500s, and it's worth mentioning, we never say no. We say not yet, but here's how. You need a game plan to buy a house, and that's where we come in at SaveWithConrad.com. We'll ask you, what down payment do you want to make? And zero is an acceptable answer. And what monthly payment do you want? And then it's time to go shopping. Find out how easy it is and how affordable it is to become a homeowner at SaveWithConrad.com. Meltzer would write, there was an amazing bit of commentary during the Vader-Jeff Jarrett match. Michael Cole talked about how Vader was in the best shape of his life, the typical brainless, nonsensical diatribe announcers say about guys who've been around for a long time but are kind of flat. And Jim Ross came back saying he thought Vader was out of shape, and Vader's belly is clearly far bigger than usual and maybe the biggest ever, but it's the first time in the history of pro wrestling that an announcer has made the observation of a headliner while building up an important pay-per-view match. This is actually said on commentary on Monday Night Raw, and it's going to be Mask versus Mask, Kane versus Vader at Over the Edge. That to me just feels like, I don't know. I can't remember ever in my life hearing that, but clearly JR was given instructions to say or do that. I don't know, man. Why did you guys, you're doing Vader wrong here, buddy.
Did you not have eyes?
Yeah, but why talk about that?
Because it was getting worse. And as an audience member or anyone with eyes, when you see him week to week, you're going, God damn, man, he's getting bigger and worse and slower and sloppier. That's just, and he wasn't. Look, man, you know, we said it before. Leon came in and he was a shell of what he was, and he went downhill from there. We tried, man. We tried. Leon, go do this stuff. You got to diet. You got to do all this stuff. And he didn't. If he had made an effort, then you wouldn't have to point it out because it wouldn't be there. But when you're trying to present someone in a certain way and they're not helping you, then you got to, point out the obvious.
Well, let's talk about what's next on the show here. Austin's going to agree to not press charges against McMahon if he apologizes. McMahon doesn't want to, but reluctantly does. And then they come out for an interview, McMahon and the Stooges, and they say they got Austin to drop the charges, and Austin could pick someone to come to ringside to make sure McMahon referees the match fairly. And McMahon says that in the main event on TV, Austin must defend the title against Undertaker, and McMahon's going to be the ref. And this is a bit of a pivot to this Undertaker story after we have just sort of had him totally entrenched in the Kane. And I mean, how are we shifting gears like that? Wouldn't it have been easier to just keep the Undertaker focused on Kane and not bring him over into this Austin McMahon piece of business?
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
But it was during the time of, everybody was free game to mix it all up and just look for exciting TV.
McMahon's going to come out to ref the main event. Undertaker comes out and chokeslams McMahon. Kane runs in and he's brawling with the Undertaker. So now Undertaker's effectively out of the picture already. Austin comes out, hits a stunner on Briscoe and Patterson, ties McMahon up in the ropes, and here comes Dude Love with a chair. Austin gets a chair and nails Dude, and then finally Austin gives McMahon a stunner as the show ends. Whole lot of chaos at the end of the show here to build the pay-per-view, and an Undertaker choke slam on Vince McMahon. I'm sure that's something they had fun with in real life. No?
Absolutely. I think that any time that Taker got to put his hands around Vince's throat was a good day for him.
Let's talk about the business before we get into the pay-per-view. House shows for the weekend of May 15th in San Jose did over 12,000 fans, $234,000 at the gate. The next day at the Pond in Anaheim, over 14,500 fans, $231,000 at the gate. And then in Birmingham, it's $10,292, paying $199,000. Merch is $10.02 a head for $488,000. My goodness, this is just, I mean, it feels like every time out you're setting another record. Is this the hottest you had ever seen wrestling in 1998? I mean, you'd been there at that point for 11 years.
It was hot in a different way, man. It was hot in a really explosive way. So probably so, yeah. There were times you go back and in Mid-South and Rock and Roll and Midnight Express and JYD during that whole time frame. Then you look at the Hogan era, and that was an incredible time frame of just pure unadulterated explosiveness. And this was, again, a time where everything was hitting on all cylinders and things were exploding. So yeah, they come along, man, where it's all like, holy shit. Good times.
Let's talk about one of the big what ifs that didn't happen, but what if it did? In Anaheim, this house show, it had been hyped locally for months. Austin versus Mero. And there's a sellout crowd here, but the match never happens. And the idea, according to Dave Meltzer, was that Austin would beat Mero and quote unquote win Sable, who would be put up by Mero to get a shot at the belt. But in this match, and that was many storylines ago, Meltzer wanted us to remember that Sable had been getting flowers, and that seemingly went nowhere, and they just sort of forgot it. And once upon a time, Austin gave Sable the look once or twice, and the crowd kind of responded. And you even had Sable on TV modeling Austin t-shirts. The idea being maybe we put them together. And Meltzer would say, anyway, that was smartly nixed because Austin doesn't need anyone invading his spotlight, but they still had the challenge from the previous Anaheim show on their hands. As it turned out, Sable gave Mero a low blow, so he was injured before the match ever took place, and Maivia took the spot, so Austin beat him. I really like when we build a story at a house show and then we come back and pay it off. That's old school. I'm for it. But do you remember there ever being serious consideration about what if we put them together? And would Austin have been a proponent of that or no?
Well, I wouldn't say consideration. I would say discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely talked about it, but I don't think that it was ever one of those where, yeah, we got to get there. I know Steve was asked about it. Steve wasn't really crazy about doing it. Didn't feel he needed it. And the concern, at least my concern, was one of, I think that it would have hurt Steve. I think it would have hurt Steve to have anybody with him in that regard. Steve was just so popular as that singular badass. Didn't need it.
Let's talk about how the show does. We're finally here, Over the Edge. We know what it did at the box office, but 203,000 buys is what we're going to do. That's almost 100,000 buys down from Unforgiven, but it's still up 60,000 buys from May the prior year, which was a cold day in hell. Overall, though, the show is a mixed bag, according to the readers of the Wrestling Observer. 47.7% voted it thumbs down. Meltzer would say, taken to the extreme is not a figure of speech regarding copying ECW, but a figure of speech regarding the typical pattern of having a really good main event and a weak undercard. In this case, the undercard was far worse than the usual weak standards, topped off or bottomed off more accurately by the saddest angle of the year. And in this case, the main event with Steve Austin and Dude Love was possibly the best match so far this year in the United States, which, while it was a great match, also points out in bold letters just how weak this year has been when it comes to producing off-the-page matches. listen, we've talked a lot on our podcast over the years, Bruce, about the importance of story more so than matches. But this match delivers, and the story has been good. But that was a criticism in this era that WCW perhaps always had a stronger undercard, but a weak main event, whereas the WWF had a reputation for having a less than awesome undercard, but an incredible main event. How do you reconcile that?
Who did more?
Well, definitely.
What did more?
Yeah.
Then that's how you reconcile it. You reconcile it with, you give the audience a choice. Do you want great story or you just want matches?
Right.
I believe that the answer in the past, history shows us, and even to this day, they want story. Audiences want story. And there are a lot of people that just want matches, and there's products out there for them. This one wasn't.
Well, it was for this audience. It's a sellout. 9,822 fans, $186,000 at the gate, almost $94,000 in merch. Let's jump into the matches. Match 1 is Legion of Doom 2000 against Skull and 8 Ball in 9 minutes and 56 seconds. Changes in the corner of Skull and 8 Ball. Sonny is back with LOD. They also have Darren Drozdoff in their corner, and it gets half a star. Not a great match. The whole LOD 2000, in hindsight, maybe not the best idea. Sonny looked like $1 million, but I don't know that this was a good fit. What say you?
Rotten. It sucked. It just, I think it was a clash of styles, and man, bless their heart. I love Joe and Mike to death, but I think the Road Warriors were long past where they should have been in the ring.
Rocky Maivia is going to come out for an interview. Farouk's going to do a run-in. They start brawling. Eventually, there's a pile driver that misses the chair by a mile, according to Dave Meltzer. And since the plan was for Maivia to do a stretcher job and get a serious injury on that spot, even though it missed, the announcers are in a terrible position. Jim Ross calls it a pile driver on the chair, trying to sell the storyline. Jerry Lawler has to say he thought the pile driver missed the chair. And of course, they never show a replay, thankfully, but they still do the stretcher job, which is interesting. But listen, shit happens when you've got a big thing like this and it just doesn't go well, but it's live. And you had this big post angle thing with the stretcher and all that. Is there panic in Gorilla, or is it just, well, that sucks, let's just get it out of there and move on?
No. And why would it? Look, if you're a heel, how would you want to leave the ring if you figured I'm going to get some sympathy here and I want to milk this as much as I possibly can? Whether you just twisted your toe, you would demand a stretcher come out,
right, and
take you back. So again, that little thing, as long as you can turn it into story, and that's the other problem with, I think, commentators knowing what's supposed to happen, is they want to try and get you there regardless. And if it didn't happen, they try to cover it. Lawler was spot on. From my vantage point, it didn't look like he even hit the chair. But no matter what, at the end, Rock would have demanded, to go out on a stretcher. Oh, come on. He doesn't need a stretcher. There's story there. And again, that's why I think that commentators, when they know too much, will fuck up a story, because if it doesn't play out right, in their mind, they think they have to fix it.
I understand. Well, I wish somebody was here to fix Jeff Jarrett and Steve Blackman. They get 10 minutes and 18 seconds. Meltzer says, despite the elaborate ring entrance, Jarrett just doesn't get over. I mean, listen, he's trying to be hateable, and he is, but the fans just can't get with it here. And I don't know if it's because they're not with Blackman or they don't know how to feel about Jeff, but it's just sort of there. It gets half a star. Certainly Blackman is still, learning how to be a television wrestler. But this was just not good. I mean, the guys have great looks and good gimmicks, but It just doesn't click. Why do you think that is?
Chemistry. I think it was chemistry, and you got to be careful with a guy like Blackman. Blackman needs someone that can work around him and emphasize what Blackman does. Jeff's a workhorse and can do a lot, but Jeff was not even remotely close to being over. So yeah, it just was a bad clash and bad mixture of matches.
Why don't you think Jeff was over with this audience here?
They didn't care. We hadn't done anything in a long time to get him over.
Right.
Just didn't care. It was old at that point.
Let's talk about match 3. Mark Merrow is going to pin Sable in 21 seconds. This was billed as Sable having a mystery partner to face Merrow, and if Sable's wrestler won, she'd get her freedom. If Merrow won, Sable would have to leave the company forever. And Sable says she wants to take the match herself. And Merrow then gets all apologetic to Sable about their past relationship and blame the wrestling business on ruining their relationship. Says he's sorry and lays down to let Sable pin him to get her freedom. And when she covers him, he reverses her, holds her down for the 3 count. The crowd doesn't react, and she's trying to cry afterwards, but maybe it's not that effective. But goodness gracious, I loved it. He is a shit heel doing shit heel stuff. This was great stuff for Mark Merrow. And there you see, if you watch it on YouTube, Sable rolling her bag out of the arena. This was good stuff, man. I don't know why the crowd.
I thought it was.
But it was well written and well executed.
Yeah, it's simple.
Yes.
Simple.
Yes.
And that was the beauty of it. Very easy to understand, very well executed. And everybody gets the story at the end of the day. What do you want? A 6.5-star match in Tokyo Dome?
Come on now.
Well, no. What do you want?
Well, as far as I think he's just saying that the crowd wasn't reacting to it, and the crowd didn't really react to it. But it was a good story.
It was a great story. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of talented performers in match number 4. We got Minz Te'ao and Sho Funaki teaming up with the show favorite here on Something to Wrestle. We love us some Dick to Go. And they're going to be taking on Taka Michinoku and Bradshaw. It's an unannounced 3-on-2 match. It goes 9 minutes and 54 seconds. Meltzer said it was probably the best match on the show, but having Bradshaw in there with these guys makes the size difference kind of comical. But that's kind of the way the story's been told. I mean, on the lead up here, you had Bradshaw trying to get Taka Michinoku to like smoke cigars and stuff.
Teaching him how to be tough.
He's 24. He's 24, but we're positioning it like he's a teenager. And that pairing, while it was brief, was pretty fun. Not a bad match either. I dig it. I don't think these guys are capable of having a bad match. What do you think Bradshaw thought about working with Kai and Tai here?
Oh, God, he loved it. But you got to remember, 24 in Japan is like 16 in the U.S.
Listen to you.
What?
Rocky
it's math. It's called math, Conrad. Do the math.
Okay, I'll carry the one. Here we go.
Yeah.
Rocky Maivia beats Farouk in 5 minutes and 2 seconds to retain the IC. Maivia is introduced twice and never comes out. Finally, Slaughter comes out and says, I'm going to give you till a 10 count to get in the ring, and then you're going to forfeit the title if you don't show up. Which should immediately make him a babyface, talking about Sergeant Slaughter. But Meltzer would say that not good. Meltzer comes out, or Maivia comes out with the belt, and he's got a neck brace on. Farouk then attacks Maivia, takes off the neck brace, starts hitting him, and they start working the match and immediately forget to sell the neck. He gets a -1 star. It's all about story. Couple of pile drivers, very little reaction. Owen Hart and the rest of the nation come in and make the save. DX does a run in to save Farouk, and the DX run in gets a reaction. But man, this Farouk character, it feels like it's just kind of dead here. I'm glad the APA is around the corner for him, but do you think at this point the Farouk thing had sort of ran its course?
I think that Rock kind of overshadowed Farouk once they made the switch to putting Rock as the leader and really making that turn. More people were interested in Rock than they were Ron. The best thing that ever happened to Ron at that point was the APA. But, it's funny. You think about, he didn't even sell the neck. Yeah, no shit. Because he didn't hit the chair, because they didn't do it. So he didn't have anything to sell. He was working. That's the point, you fucking Mark.
I love you.
And I hate, look, man, people that call our audience members marks is so disrespectful. You're a mark if you're calling people that watch our show marks. Dave, please, he's just an idiot. I'm sorry for it. That was bad of me to call him a mark. He's just more of an idiot.
Are you saying, I mean, I didn't know you felt this way, but are you saying fuck Dave Meltzer?
Yeah.
Well, that's not fair. That's not cool. It's not nice.
Yeah, well, it's accurate.
Well, what's accurate is you guys took a look at Vader, made fun of how fat he was on Monday, and then put him on pay-per-view in a mask versus mask match against Kane. Kane wins. Surprise.
Oh, boy. So Vader had to take that mask off. Boy.
The big reveal. It's really Leon White underneath. Who would have thought?
Oh, my God.
Vader's working this match here in real life with a pulled hamstring, and Meltzer would note he had noticeably dropped weight since his TV appearance that was taped 2 weeks earlier. But the two just didn't work well at all. They tried to act as if nobody had ever seen Vader without a mask on before, and they'd get a chance to see him unmasked if he lost. And Earl Hebner is back as a referee in this match. Finally, Vader hits a hard clothesline and misses a moonsault. Kane uses the tombstone piledriver on Vader. And that gets the pin. Meltzer would say the match had no heat. Vader unmasked and then did an interview. This is legendary, where he said he was nothing but a fat piece of shit. And he's nearly crying. It gets a dud rating. This is crazy to think about. I love that look of Paul Bearer wearing Vader's mask, laughing. That's a fun look.
And he smelled that mask for the next 6 weeks.
I just don't. Why would you have a talent go on a pay-per-view, get on a mic, and call himself, I'm nothing but a fat piece of shit? What? Where's the money in that, dude?
Well, you would hope that he would go out and lose weight and people would be behind him to improve. Because everybody's seen, look, Conrad, you have this rose-colored glasses thing of Vader, what you think he was. He wasn't that when he got to WWE. He wasn't in the same shape. He didn't have the same cardio. Nothing was the same. So when people say that, it's like, oh, where does the onus come on the talent to be in shape and stay on top of their game? That's not the promotion's fault. So for a talent to say that, and then the idea is to go get in shape, which was what it was supposed to be. Now go get in shape and come back, and now you're rooting for the guy to get in shape and come back and be better than he ever was. But he didn't come in that way, and he got worse while he was here. And that's just a fact. That's not, oh, you didn't like him or he, missed the spot here or there. No, that's just, again, man, sweetheart of a guy. Leon White is. Lazy. He was lazy and not always motivated. And I think this was a way to motivate him. Everybody wanted the old Vader. Everybody wanted, that killer. We just never got him.
Why don't you just cut him loose?
Well, eventually we did. Because he kept insisting, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get in shape. Tried to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Next up, we're going to have Mad Dog Vachon and the Crusher come out here. Lawler is going to be involved. He's going to hit the ring, and Crusher is going to protect Mad Dog and hit Lawler with what Meltzer called the single most pathetic bolo punch in history. But it got a huge pop because people wanted to see Crusher do one last bolo punch. Lawler barely sold Crusher's big move, but then again, it would have no credibility had he sold it. But should have just ended there. But then Lawler jumped in the ring to take Mad Dog's artificial leg off, and Crusher chased him away again. But it became obvious Crusher couldn't move. At this point, Lawler took off his robe, and he's looking unathletic these days. And Crusher, who looked fine in the shirt, took off his shirt, and that got no pop and was really sad to see all those fans in Milwaukee who probably remember Crusher as their powerhouse. The skit ended with Crusher hitting Lawler with Mad Dog's artificial leg, which may have been a big deal since everyone remembered what happened with Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels using it in their match. It is a big deal because, as mentioned before, the last memory of Crusher that any of these will ever see is of this crippled old man, unable to move, taking off his shirt rather than a memory of a grizzled old powerhouse. Listen, they're having fun. It's legends. It's nostalgia. Do you think you were doing these guys a disservice, or were they loving it because it was one last moment in the sun?
They were loving it, but I would also challenge the worst bolo punch. We look back in our history. We look back at when we were kids and what was great, what looked great. And when we go back and look at that through the lens of 2023, you go, oh my God, that was horrible. Oh, that stunk. When I go back and look at the Crusher stuff, it's pretty horrible. It stunk. But in that time, when there was nothing else to compare it to, and Crusher had this ungodly personality and charisma, you look at that and go, okay, my God, he had that crowd going crazy. Because he did, just off of his personality, and he could do a few things, and that's all you needed to do then. But times had changed. And was it rotten? Yeah, but it was nostalgia. It was nostalgia, and I dare say it was as good then as it ever was.
Let's talk about what's next here. It's match number 7, and boy, is it a long one. It's Owen Hart and Kama Mustafa and D'Lo Brown taking on Triple H and the New Age Outlaws. They go 18 and a half minutes, and the crowd starts chanting boring about 13 minutes in. Chyna's going to get involved and attack Mark Henry. Brown is going to get a spike pile driver on a tag belt by Triple H and Billy Gunn, but he's saved. And then Owen Hart uses Hunter's own pedigree on him on the title belt, and that gets the pin. So Owen pins Hunter here after 18 and a half minutes, star and a half. So far, we have not had very much good on this pay-per-view, but boy, it all turns around with our main event. Steve Austin retains the WWF title, beating Dude Love in 22 minutes and 28 seconds. As you see there, if you're watching on YouTube, Dude Love is challenging for the Big Eagle, the world title. Vince McMahon is your special guest referee. Pat Patterson is your special guest ring announcer. And Gerald Briscoe is the special guest timekeeper. And the ring introductions take forever, but it's super fun and campy in a great way. Well, maybe a bad way. Howard Finkel introduces Pat Patterson, claiming he's a Canadian hero along the lines of Wayne Gretzky. Talks about his winning the Intercontinental title in a grueling tournament in Rio de Janeiro. Jim Ross pipes in with commentary and says, wink, wink. It said that he's a great role model to children. And then Patterson introduces Briscoe, plugs his body shop in Tampa, gives the address and the phone number, says he's the first Native American to ever be inducted in the WWF, calls him the reincarnation of Jim Thorpe. Then he introduces Vince McMahon, who's coming out strutting, flexing his arms, and Patterson refuses to even announce Austin's name. And before the match starts, The Undertaker comes out as Austin's guy to watch and make sure McMahon is officiating the match fairly. So that's great. As a reminder, Vince has said you could have somebody to make sure I do a fair job. He chooses The Undertaker, and the crowd goes nuts for almost every spot. One that doesn't resonate, and maybe as I've talked to Foley about this, and he has a theory, is when Austin takes the false teeth out of Dude Love. Now, remember, one of the iconic things about this Cactus Jack character is he's missing those teeth. And so when Austin reaches in and pulls out these fake teeth, stomps them, throws them out in the crowd, it seems like that doesn't get a big spot. But Meltzer would say, man, Eddie Graham and the Great Malenko built an entire industry around that spot in Florida in the 60s. And now it's not even really good for a pop. Why do you think that spot didn't hit? I thought him, stomping the teeth and throwing them in the crowd, that's great stuff.
I thought it was excellent too, because Wahoo McDaniel and Boris Malenko did that spot in Houston in 1970. And I thought it was great then. So I thought thought it should have been great here. And it was great for me. I popped.
I love the way Pat Patterson gets involved in this match. Once weapons are announced or are introduced, Pat Patterson joins the commentary or goes through the house PA and says, as a reminder, this match is a no DQ match. Now that was never announced, but I love
that's what Pat was doing. He was announcing it then. He had forgotten earlier.
It's such great heel stuff that as Dude Love starts to do these things to mess with Austin, Patterson just as a reminder. So as they're brawling all around the place, he does it again. As a reminder, this is a false count anywhere. It's just great stuff. They're breaking down the cars. They're using the chairs. They're using the guardrails. Sunset flips on this and broken windshields on that. I mean, really an all-time great match. I mean, Meltzer even said at this point, probably the best match in America. We're like halfway through the year, and this is the best match of the year. Really, really great stuff. Eventually, McMahon gets knocked out. Mike Chioda's going to run in, start doing some counting. Patterson's going to pull him out of the ring and deck him. And then Dude Love's going to hit the mandible claw on Austin. Patterson's going to jump in to make the 3 count, but Undertaker pulls Patterson out of the ring and choke slams him, which is great because Pat is kicking his feet the whole way up, which is just tremendous as he goes down through the announcer's table. Briscoe then jumps in and has the same thing happen to him through the Spanish announcer's table. Austin then gets out of the way, delivers another stunner while covering Love. And remember now, McMahon has said the fall is going to be counted with this very hand. Well, once he nails the stunner, Austin just reaches over and counts 3 with McMahon's limped hand. He wins 4.5 stars. Lots of gaga, lots of fun. I mean, I realize it's not a conventional wrestling match, but it's story, it's entertaining, it's physical, it's violent. This is about as good as it gets for a main event, and really a tale of 2 cards. The undercard, not that great, but this main event, go out of your way to see it. No,
fabulous.
Yes,
fabulous. Lots of gaga, lots of story, and people going, holy shit throughout the entire match, and the right finish. It was the right thing. It gave people reason to cheer at the end, and it also left the heels wanting more and feeling they deserve more. They got screwed in their eyes.
I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, we saw these guys at Unforgiven, and we see them again the next month at Over the Edge, and this is a better match, but buys are down. Do you think there was, in the monthly pay-per-view era, fans didn't want to see the same main event back to back? Is that maybe what hurt it?
I don't think so. The new gas station opened up down the street. It could be anything.
Well, it's important to remember that, he's got so many gimmicks, Mick Foley. I could have seen how after he loses this type of match with the cars and the brawling and all that, now he wants to do a third match with Cactus Jack. We know we don't go that way. And we know what happens 1 month later in June of 1998 at King of the Ring with Mankind. I'm glad it wound up the way it did, but I think I would have liked to have seen Stone Cold versus Cactus Jack. Do you think that could have worked as a pay-per-view main event?
Eventually you could have gotten there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Well, let's do some fan questions here. Umar wants to know, Bruce, would you say that Austin versus Dude Love was the match of the year for 1998?
I don't do matches of the year, but I think it was a tremendous match. It was definitely the match of that particular pay-per-view for sure.
Well, you want to talk about the nitty-gritty. My man, Matt, he knows the nitty-gritty. He lives to enlighten. He says, silly cosmetic question, but why in the WWF scratch logo was there no red line under the WWF logo for Unforgiven and Over the Edge 98? Also, why was Over the Edge the time to debut the scratch logo turnbuckle pads, replacing the iconic block logo ones? This is, the infancy of the Attitude Era, if you will. We're transitioning the logos and fans are paying attention. I guess these 2 shows didn't have the red lines underneath. I didn't know that, Bruce, but good catch, Matt.
Okay. Well, Matt, I don't have the answer to your question. However, there was not a red line. It was a scar.
Okay.
So there you go.
Adam Leeson wants to know, was Vince even tempted to show up and fight Eric? you think it ever even just for a moment he thought about it?
I think that for a moment, without a doubt, Vince thought about it and probably wanted to do it, but knew that he couldn't, shouldn't, and wouldn't.
Next week, Bruce, we'll be talking about the end of Ken Shamrock in the WWF, and in the coming months, we're going to be talking about Jacques Rougeau, Mr. America, King of the Ring 95, Sean Waltman, John Cena, Batista, and Bruce, towards the end of the summer, we're going to celebrate our 7-year anniversary. What in the world?
How'd you get me to do this for 7 years?
Getting that 7-year itch?
Remember when we asked if we could even do this for 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I remember I had to sell you on it for a few weeks, and you came around.
I thought that was... I did that.
Well, it was one of us. I remember that.
Somebody
By
did.
the way, you get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. We talked a little bit about the magazine today. We recently just sat down with Keith Elliott Greenberg, who has popped up in a ton of WWE documentaries, and he's actually in the beginning stages of working on his next book, all about WrestleMania 3. Hear our full conversation now over at adfreeshows.com. By the way, if your business targets men that are 25 to 54 years old, buddy, there's no better place to advertise than right here on Something to Wrestle. Bruce Prichard. You've heard us do some of the same ads for the same companies year after year after year. Why is that? Well, because it really works. And with a super targeted audience, there's very little waste. Go right now to advertisewithbruce.com and find out how easy and affordable it is to advertise here on Something to Wrestle With. Love to have your interactions on Twitter. It's easy to keep up with the show on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Prichard Show. We are Something to Wrestle over on Facebook. And the easiest and best way to support the show is to subscribe to our YouTube. That's somethingtowrestle.com. Somethingtowrestle.com. Throw us your comments, leave us your likes, hit the subscribe button, and be sure to check out all the new merch that we've got, including Brother Love's Endless Love Line over at somethingtowrestleshirts.com. I love that Feeling Brucey shirt, and maybe my favorite. I wore it this week, the Wiz Awful His Owl shirt. Check it out right now. Somethingtowrestleshirts.com. Bruce, final words about Superstar Billy Graham, about Over the Edge 98, about wrestling at large. You want to leave us with a thought today?
Hey, Superstar, rest in peace. Over the Edge. It's just another demonstration of story is the way to go. And everybody else, rock on.
We'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle With Bruce Prichard.